Well, we actually have some pretty serious injury updates before we get to questions here. Let's go ahead and let's pull these up. Now, the main thing that we want to be talking about is going to be what you have with Mr. Bucky Irving. Obviously, honestly, let's just get to everything in order here. We don't necessarily need to go with Bucky first. But regardless, let me start this live stream on flockfantasy.com. And then we can pull up the injury updates that we are looking at. So first thing that we have here is Jakobi Meyers, Zamir White listed as questionable for week 6. Now, Adams is already ruled out. So typically what we would say is, oh, okay, this is one of the worst offenses in the NFL. Not super excited about anybody not named Brock Bowers. Maybe you could start Jakobi Meyers if you really needed to with no Devontae Adams. But the thing is, if Myers isn't fully healthy himself, I don't know. I don't really have any interest in starting Jakobi Meyers. Devontae Adams listed as out, obviously. That means you can't start Adams. Audric Estime may actually play this week. Now, if that does happen, if you were deciding between Javonte Williams, Austin Eckler, 2 running backs in that range, you probably go with the running back that's not in Denver just so we can get some confirmation on what the Estime role will look like. Not expecting it to be massive, of course. Josh Reynolds ruled out week 6. Don't think it matters. Gus Edwards ruled out for week 6. Will actually make a difference here. Let me actually go over and update the rankings that we have on the site and specifically look at where we had J.K. Dobbins for week 6 and see where we need to be moving this guy with no Gus Edwards. Because you look previously, Gus Edwards did have a role here. I think with no Edwards, I would definitely prefer J.K. Dobbins over Rico Dowdle. Jonathan Taylor officially ruled out as well. We didn't know exactly where he'd be, so we'd throw him here at the very bottom end of the rankings. But yeah, we had him in the middle of the rankings, just waiting for the confirmation today. But regardless, yeah, I think you have J.K. Dobbins up to about running back 20-ish. And I'm interested to see if we have any additional updates regarding Jaylen Warren here in Pittsburgh. But we will see that in just 1 second. Thanks for the ads, Twitter. Michael Mayer placed on the NFL. It doesn't really matter. He was an interesting prospect coming out of school, but ultimately, as soon as Brock Bowers was drafted, you're never going to hear from this guy again. Michael Pittman Jr. has decided to try to play. Colts considered placing him on the IR. Now, this is a pretty big change that you have. I'm definitely not playing Pittman for sure. Even if he does play at this point, I don't necessarily know what you can expect the role to be. But obviously, if Pittman were to be good to go, then at that point, Josh Downs becomes a lot less appealing. But it's not like you have any of these options here as super exciting plays in Indianapolis regardless. Rachaad White officially listed doubtful. This means that Bucky Irving is going to be a must-start running back. We had Bucky Irving previously at RB26, Rachaad White at RB27. Let's get Rachaad White down here near the very bottom end. Just make sure that nobody is starting him. And then going through and updating this Bucky Irving ranking. He will jump Chase Brown. He will jump Jerome Ford. He will jump Singletary. He will jump ETN. He will jump Dowdle. Has the ability as a receiver, and he has a better matchup than Dobbins does as well. So I'd probably be moving Bucky Irving. Honestly, I would rather start him over Najee, especially where you have the Bucs favored in this game. So presumably we are going to get a ton of rushing attempts in the second, or not to say a ton, but rushing attempts in the second half. Alvin Kamara, Shaheed, both fully good to go. Not starting Shaheed because you have no Derek Carr. Obviously, Kamara is a start regardless, especially if Taysom Hill is listed as out, because with no Taysom, Kamara does have that expanded role in the red zone. Noah Brown, not listed on the injury report, don't care. Dameon Pierce, not listed on the injury report, don't care. Russell Wilson, I don't care. Rashad Bateman, I don't care. Obviously, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, we are already planning on playing. Christian Watson listed questionable for week 6. If Watson does play, definitely less excited about these secondary options in Green Bay like Dontavian Wicks. But main thing is Jaden Reed's going to be a must-start player regardless. Christian Watson definitely is worth a roster spot. I wouldn't hesitate to pick him up off the waiver wire for whatever reason he was sitting out there on waivers for you. But still. Now, Trey Sermon not listed on the injury report, which will be very important because You have no Jonathan Taylor this week. So now that Trey Sermon's 100% good to go and you have no JT, I think we can move Sermon up these rankings dramatically. I would much prefer Sermon over Gibson, Spears, Algier, Allen, Charbonnet. Obviously, Charbonnet already played. I prefer him over Bigsby, Roshan, Eckler, Madison, Javonte, Ramondre. I'd probably put him in here about RB27. He had the usage as a receiver last week. He can actually move higher than this if you have Joe Flacco under center. But Anthony Richardson tracking to play week 6. Now, that's the issue with Sermon in that we should probably expect that you have a couple of these touchdowns to the goal line get vultured by Anthony Richardson, or at least I'll say a couple, but you possibly have that ability from A-Rich to take the rushing TDs, and you'll have a lower check down rate overall as well. Ramondre Stevenson ruled out for week 6. Ramondre getting ruled out means that you need to go all in on Antonio Gibson if he's on your waiver wire. He's on the waiver wire in the Flock League. Hopefully none of them are watching this, but your boy will be picking up Antonio Gibson. So let's get Ramondre at the bottom end of these rankings. Gibson jumps Spears, Algier, Braylon Allen, Charbonnet, Bigsby, Roshan, Eckler, Madison, Javonte. I would probably rather have Gibson over Trey Sermon, knowing that you are going to have the receiving role with Antonio Gibson here. But it's just such a bad offense where sportsbooks do have the Patriots as the lowest scoring offense in the NFL this week. Niners not going to be activating CMC. Jordan Mason officially diagnosed with the sprained AC joint, considered day-to-day. And then Joe Mixon expected to play. We have Joe Mixon ranked as a high-end RB2, low-end RB1 this week. Romeo Dobbs going to be good to go. Rashad White is doubtful, as we said previously. A.J. Brown, good to go. Devin Singletary, still questionable. Gesicki, good to go. Doesn't matter. Ingram, still questionable. Nick Chubb ruled out week 6. Nick Chubb has been at practice, not only this week, but last week as well. So definitely seems like Chubb is ramping up here. But yeah, definitely not starting Nick Chubb until you actually see him on the field, and then you can consider the next week based off how he looks. Jonathan Taylor ruled out week 6. We already talked about that. Anthony Richardson is going to be good to play. Now, Jaylen Warren, if Jaylen Warren is active, that will mean that Najee Harris falls dramatically down these rankings. Right now, we have Najee Harris at RB19. If Jaylen Warren plays, I'd much prefer Zach Moss, J.K. Dobbins, Rico Dowdle, Travis Etienne, Devin Singletary. Najee would fall down to being an RB3 in fantasy if Jaylen Warren is good to go. Now, without Warren, I do think that Najee, who's averaging about 20 opportunities a game so far, is probably a must-start guy in a good matchup against the Raiders. Shakir, James Cook don't practice again on Friday. So it does seem like James Cook's probably tracking to miss. It's going to be a big thing that we are going to have to be monitoring tomorrow. Leggett not listed on the injury report for week 6. Probably don't want to start Xavier Leggett. Hope he crushes for my underdog teams for sure. Deontay Johnson should be good to go. Zach Moss will be playing as well. Brian Robinson considered a game time decision. So with B-Rob being that game time decision, if he misses, Austin Eckler is definitely someone that we can consider getting in. The issue is he was a game time decision last week. He didn't practice at all last week, and he still ended up playing. So I think that's probably my expectation this week. And also Jeremy McNichols may be involved as well. Malik Neighbors ruled out week 6. So we can definitely look at where we have Wan'Dale in these rankings. Let me confirm that we already plummeted Neighbors. Yes, we did. Wan'Dale Robinson, we have at wide receiver 21. So we've already updated this. But yeah, I'm not going to be moving Wan'Dale ahead of Thomas, T. Higgins, but I would rather have Wan'Dale Robinson in a great matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals over these guys like Pickens and Zay Flowers. Going over to this, Ramondre Stevenson, not expected to be out long-term. Today, and then everything else is from yesterday. So let me know if you have any other injury-related questions, and then we can go ahead and get to those. But definitely want to start diving into some of the questions that have been submitted through the sites. But let me publish these rankings on the site. And of course, if y'all ever wanted to check out our updated rankings, you can always go over to flockfantasy.com. flockfantasy.com. You can check out the rest of season expert rankings for completely free. If you wanted to look at my rankings in particular, hit sort by and then hit Mason Dodd. So the expert's going to be an average of all these other creators. If you're a paid member of the site, you can sort by my rankings exactly. Here are my updated rest of season RB ranks. And then obviously you can pivot over and you can look at week 6 instead. One other thing, I think we mentioned this previously, is go over to the My Teams page if you haven't already linked your team. Link your team if you play on... Sorry, we're going to hit add new. Sleeper, ESPN, or Yahoo. Go ahead, link your fantasy football league completely free. You're able to see power rankings based off the value on your roster. And at the same time, you can actually go ahead and you can see the best waiver wire options as well. So we can go ahead and we can sort these by my rankings in particular. And if you're a paid member, like I would recommend sorting by mine. I keep mine updated super, super often. But yeah, you can see based on my rankings, the best waiver wire pickups in our league: Cole Kmet, Kate Otten, Gibson, Jalen Wright, Julian McGoughlin, Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews. But yeah, it's completely free over there on flockfantasy.com if you want to check it out. If you ever wanted to ask a question through flockfantasy.com, we are answering questions every single night on the live stream that are submitted. Go to the expert advice button in the top right corner. You can ask a start sit question, trade question, or get a full-blown roster review, whatever you are wanting. If you want a roster review, however, I would definitely recommend taking advantage of the offer that we have over on Underdog Fantasy, or if you go over to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, you will get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, you'll be getting a free team review in the live stream that we are doing every single night. And for the Sunday game, you'll be getting a free Joe Burrow pick more than less than half a total yard as well. Just make sure you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog Fantasy. And also, you can ask a question on the site literally anytime you want. You don't even have to be in the live stream, because once I answer it in the live stream for you, it's going to send you an exact YouTube link of the clip of me talking about your fantasy football team. So you should be good to go. But much love. Let's go ahead and let's dive into our first team that we are going to be looking at here. This is one of those free underdog submissions from the Micro Squad. It says, big fan here, won both my leagues thanks to you last year. Looking to repeat this one and need some advice. Not sure if we should try to trade for a better running back room or hold out until Pacheco's back as well. Hello again from Atlanta. Go Falcons. Sorry about Bijan. I think we maybe already looked at this team for you, my friend, but going to be excited to check it out again just in case we didn't. So first thing is, this is a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format. So with this league format in general, the wide receiver depth's not going to be super important, and we should be optimizing to try to upgrade the 1C positions and the running back position by selling wide receiver depth where we get the ability. Second thing I want to point out is you have really good players on your waiver wire. So in general, 2-for-1 deals are going to be extremely advantageous for us here. Like if you're able to go through, make a 2-for-1 deal by selling, say, Jordan Addison and Devin Singletary and getting a running back upgrade. And then at that point, you're able to go through and pick up DeAndre Hopkins, pick up Calvin Ridley for free off the waiver wire. Like your downgrade at wide receiver at that point's not going to be massive. So if you're getting, any meaningful upgrade at the running back position by going through and selling that wide receiver at the bottom end of your roster, it just makes a ton of sense based off the waiver wire options that you have. But starting off at quarterback, we are currently sitting with Josh Allen. When you have Allen, you're able to start him every week, regardless of the matchup. We're hoping that we're going to get some more rushing touchdowns sometime soon. Obviously, Josh Allen has not been consistent. He has been one of the least consistent players in all of fantasy football. But you still have 2 games over 30 points. You still have that crazy high ceiling, particularly from the rushing, but we just need more rushing touchdowns. But anyway, I don't think you need to have a backup quarterback here if you have Allen. Going over to running back, we're screwed. This week, we're starting Javonte Williams and hopefully Devin Singletary. Even if Rashad White and Ramondre Stevenson were healthy, would I be excited to start? I wouldn't know. I wouldn't be excited to start these guys. So, if you could go through and if you could get an upgrade at running back, it's an absolute no-brainer. Like, the thing is, if we knew for sure that Isaiah Pacheco was going to be coming back in 2-3 weeks from now, then I'd say, oh, you know what? Hell, the team's 3-2. Maybe we can skirt by as is. Maybe we don't need to panic. But there's not a guarantee that Isaiah Pacheco comes back for the fantasy football regular season. Like Pacheco may not come back at all. He may come back for the fantasy football playoffs. He may come back for the NFL playoffs. It's just extremely difficult to know right now. So I don't think you can bank on Pacheco coming back. If you get the ability to take Xavier Worthy and package with any running back for an RB upgrade, you do it. If you get the ability to take Ladd McConkey, package for any upgrade at running back, you do it. Same thing with Jordan Addison. Because you go over to wide receiver, we have Lamb, London, and Devonta Smith. Smith already threw his bye week. So really, there's no concern here whatsoever in the long term at wide receiver. You're going to be able to start 2 guys every single week, and then one of them at the flex spot. So Worthy, Ladd McConkey, we can go ahead. We can sell that long-term upside to get a running back upgrade right now, especially because I kind of want to open up a roster spot. That way we're able to go and pick up some of these exciting options off the waiver wire. As right now, I mean, you can look at this. We have Braylon Allen sitting out there on the waiver wire. I would love to pick up a player like Braylon Allen where, I mean, he could be a desperation flex play for a team like this. But more importantly, if you were to get that injury to Breece Hall, then all of a sudden Braylon Allen is a legitimate league winner. So yeah, I would love to make that 2-for-1 deal, package together Worthy and Rachaad White, package together Ladd and Ramondre, go get an upgrade at running back if you can. Like we said, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league where the wide receiver depth doesn't matter. We're super strong at wide receiver. You can see the league analyzer has us as the strongest wide receiver team in this entire league. And yeah, and we're looking at the league analyzer. We are here with the other top teams looking like a little group of juggernauts. So I would prefer to get that upgrade at running back because there's really no reason not to with how strong our wide receiver core is. But I really do appreciate you and really hope that I was able to help you out in some way. Obviously, there's not much to talk about when it comes to Jake Ferguson. We're starting Ferguson every week regardless. Don't need that backup tight end, so really like to see that. But thank you again. I really appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out. But let's move this over for Lamborghini Chasers. It says, obviously could have a better running back too, but what moves could I make to improve the team? Or do I really need to do anything at all? 2 weeks ago, I traded Kyron for Lamb straight up following Kyron 3 touchdown game. So that's how I got Lamb. Currently 4-1 going into week 6. Well, first thing is, this is a crazy league with the disparity of things. The top team in this league has over triple the value of the bottom team. Going through and looking at the bottom team in this league, this is a team that is rolling out Montgomery Dobbins as their RB1 and RB2 in a 10-team format. They're rolling out Godwin Kirk as their wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 in a 10-team format. They're rolling out Njoku, and their flex option is Trey Sermon. Like, there are the haves and the haves not with this league. We are lucky to be here at the top with these second slots. We do have Josh Allen here at quarterback. Obviously, with Allen, super inconsistent. It's been very frustrating this year. I had him ranked as QB1 coming into the season. That looks horrendous at this point. But I do still think he's a top 5 quarterback. We just need some of the rushing touchdowns to be there. And I'm still not wanting to roster a backup QB here, pretty much just playing Allen regardless of the matchup. Obviously, it's trending towards maybe not being that, but I have faith that he can turn it around. Going over to running back, we have a top 5 guy in the short term here with Derrick Henry, short term and long term. But more so like looking at the bottom of the bench, if we can break this down short term, long term, we have the short term option with Dowdle. We potentially have the long term option with Jonathan Brooks. If this was a 12-team format, I'd be completely fine with this running back room. I think you can even be excited about this running back room in a 12-team format. The issue is going to be specifically in a 10-team league. Like, is Rico Dowdle a top 20 running back? No, he's not. Is Jonathan Brooks top 20 running back? No, he's not. So in a 10-team league, these guys more so profiled to be like RB2s RB3s rather than RB2s. Now going over to what we have at wide receiver, we have 2 top 5 options with Lamb and Chase. Obviously, we have Ayuk as one of the most disappointing players in fantasy football so far this year. Tank Dell, George Pickens, Ladd McConkey, Wan'Dale Robinson. So I'm completely fine with us maybe not necessarily going through and trading away someone like Brandon Ayuk, primarily because you're not going to get anything for him, right? But I mean, the absolute no-brainer deal here is if you could somehow take Brandon Ayuk and Rico Dowdle, move them in a 2-for-1 trade and get an upgrade there at running back, or Brandon Ayuk, Jonathan Brooks, move them in a 2-for-1 trade and get an upgrade there at running back. I think that'd be an absolute no-brainer, because then you could go over to the waiver wire and you can pick up Keon Coleman for free. Now, the other trade that is the number one deal to look for, if we can somehow pull it off, is we are sitting here with Tucker Kraft, Kyle Pitts, and Dallas Goedert. If we can somehow move some of these tight ends and get an upgrade at running back, it would be a no-brainer. In a 10-team league, it's easier said than done. Going through and looking at some of the teams in this league, this team has David Njoku, Tyler Conklin. They have David Montgomery, J.K. Dobbins at running back. I mean, if you could go through and send, say, Dallas Goedert and Jonathan Brooks to get David Montgomery, Kyle Pitts, Rico Dowdle to get David Montgomery, Tucker Kraft, Zach Charbonnet for David Montgomery. If we could get to David Montgomery with any combination of one of these tight ends and one of the running backs not named Derrick Henry, I think that'd be an absolute no-brainer. This team here at tight end is Hawkinson, Kmet, and Mark Andrews. They also have Aaron Jones at running back. So very similar. I mean, if you could go through and if you could trade any combination of your tight ends here with Kraft, Pitts, Goddard, with any combination of one of the running backs with Brooks, Rico Dowdle, Zach Charbonnet, and if we can pivot over to Aaron Jones for the long-term play there at RB, I think that would make so much sense. If you could make that 2-for-1 deal and not roster 3 tight ends through the rest of the year, that would be advantageous. Obviously, these tight ends are too good to cut, so you're really trying to squeeze some value out with them with the trade. And then with that, I think going through and picking up a receiver that has a ton of upside like Keon Coleman makes sense. My only issue is it's a 10-team league where you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, and we're already rostering a ridiculous amount of receivers that if all else was equal, I'd probably prefer going through and targeting some of the running backs off the waiver wire. The best running backs available to you on waivers right now are Spears, Bigsby, Mostert, Jalen Warren, Tyler Algier, Antonio Gibson. Maybe you look to Gibson with the injury that you have to Ramondre Stevenson. But nonetheless, I mean, opening up a roster spot so we can take advantage and pick up one of these running backs or Keon Coleman. I'd probably go for Keon Coleman. I think it would be great. There's no way in hell we should be rostering 3 tight ends either. So, I mean, obviously plan A is to sell one of the wide receivers. I'm sorry, one of the tight ends with one of the running backs to get an RB upgrade. But I think plan B, you could even go sell a receiver and a tight end to get a wide receiver upgrade, and there open up a roster spot to pick up a running back off the waiver wire. That way we're just not rostering as many healthy running backs as we are as healthy tight ends. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much for being a member of the flock. I really hope I was able to help you out in some way here. And yeah, thank you so much for everything. Now, Garlic Burger coming out with a start set. Says, hey, Mason, don't really need any advice this week with everyone healthy, but we're 2-0 when I buy this. Okay. I'm a little bit confused. Here, quarterback, we are going Caleb over Geno. Great call. Impressive call. I'll say that. Flex spot, we have no Jonathan Taylor. No Gus. I would cut Gus Edwards. I think you probably have a better option on the waiver wire. We're going to go Trey Sermon now that Sermon's completely off the injury report. And yeah, just super impressive call if you went Caleb over Geno. Super impressive. Now moving this over to the Binnacle or Bella Balls. Says, I just traded my 2025 first for Jamison Williams and Xavier Legette. I do not like that. I'm sorry. I'm hoping that pans out because my receivers were underperforming. Will I get a notification when you go live on stream? If you're subscribed to YouTube, you should get a notification. But also, you will get this sent to you through your email. It gets sent through flockfantasy.com as well. But anyway, this is a 2-quarterback, 12-team start 10 Dynasty league. If we are looking at the league analyzer, we do have one of the more valuable teams in the league. Right now, we are 4-6. I know some people are going to go, how are you 4-6? We're in week 6. They're playing against the league median, so you get an extra game every week. So going through and selling our 2025 first, what it does is it puts you in a position where you are now all in to contending this season. We are here to win right now. There is no incentive to pivot over to a rebuild. It's effectively, I don't want to say now or never, but you are highly skewed to be that win now team. And we need to make deals that structure us that way. Going over to quarterback, we are sitting with Love, Lawrence, McCarthy, Bo Nix. So a trade that I would have almost rather made is I would have almost rather just sold McCarthy for Jameson and Leggett. That way we could have had a little more flexibility through the rest of the season, because obviously this is a great quarterback room, not only for the short term, but for the long term as well. I mean, preferably the long term here, where, I mean, all these quarterbacks are extremely young, where you're not expecting any regression anytime soon for them. Definitely can contend with this QB room, but like we said, I mean, I think the main thing you're excited about is the long-term value. Now, going over to what you have at running back, we have Bijan Robinson as one of the very few running backs in Dynasty where you're confident with the short-term production and the long-term production. You have Brooks for the long-term, Henry as a top 5 running back for this season, Kareem Hunt for some short-term depth, Zach Moss for some short-term depth. So overall, the running back room is definitely a well-balanced room where you have the short-term production while at the same time you do have a considerable amount of long-term value as well with somebody like Jonathan Brooks and another player like Bijan Robinson. But typically at running back, we're only really considering the short-term in Dynasty. Going over to wide receiver, we have Lamb as that cornerstone asset. Build around him for this season, build around him for the long term. Just simply does not matter. We have Ladd, Leggett, Jameson. So here's like the issue that I have with the team is it seems like a team that you are situated with so many of these assets that will be better in the long term than they are in the short term. Like looking at Leggett, Jameson Williams, Ladd McConkey. I don't know how excited you can be about these players for this season. Like Ladd wide receiver 2 in Dynasty for the long term is great, but we're not as focused in on 2025 and beyond because we sold our 2025 first. We need to win this season. So I think what would make sense is looking at a couple of these rookie wide receivers is if we can go through and attack some of these teams that are looking to rebuild. Like this team's 2-8 here. With this roster being 2-8, like if you can send them Ladd McConkey and get Jalen Waddle and give us a better shot to contend this year, I think that'd be very interesting. Maybe send them Xavier Leggett and get back in Devontae Adams and Tyler Lockett. I think that could be interesting. I'd probably prefer a little bit more value if we were to sell Leggett. I definitely would rather have Leggett over Adams in Dynasty. Maybe you go like Leggett for Adams, Lockett, and a couple third rounders. Because once you sell that 2025 first, I think you are kind of pushing your chips in the middle to win this year. And I just don't necessarily know if we can do it with the wide receiver core that we have, where the wide receiver core is situated in which it should be much better in the long term than it is this season. Which is fine for certain builds and to a certain extent. But when so many of these players that we have here are those rookie profiles, I think I would want to cash in if we can. And then going over to tight ends, we have Ferguson. Obviously Ferguson, great cornerstone asset to build around in Dynasty kind of regardless here. But I really do appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way with this. Obviously, overall, I think it's a Dynasty team that has a lot of upside. I think it's a team that's 4-6, though, where we sold our 2025 first, so we need to look to win right now. So possibly pivoting off the rookie receivers to go get some veteran wide receiver talent from a rebuilding roster makes sense because of the situation we put ourselves in. Now going over to Chef Daddy for this team review. This is another one of those free Underdog team reviews. Says 4-1 right now, wanting to see if you can advise on free agent pickups or even trade possibilities to better the team. Or do you think we should just stay put? Thanks for the feedback. Thank you. Going to be excited to check this out. I will say in general, this is a fantasy football league where they are the crushers at the top, the flashers and Chef Daddy. We are well ahead of the rest of the league. Well ahead of them. So this should be an extremely strong roster. Obviously, it's 4-1 for a reason. I'm going ahead and pulling this up. We are currently sitting with Lamar Jackson QB1. So when we have Lamar Jackson, this is a situation where you don't need a roster, a backup quarterback, of course. You're starting Lamar every single week regardless. And then also looking at what we have when it comes to the league settings, this is a format in which you can get a ton of wide receivers in your lineup. This is a start 9 league. So the depth here, especially at wide receiver, actually does matter significantly more. So I am completely fine rostering this many receivers. The only thing that I would say is in terms of the actual wide receivers themselves that we are rostering, I think that you can chase a little bit more upside with somebody like Keon Coleman than you would be able to with Quentin Johnston. So I'd probably go through, I'd probably cut Johnston to pick up Keon there for our last wide receiver slot. I think you could also look to cut Michael Wilson to pick up TJ Hawkinson, where it's not a guarantee that Dallas Goedert will outscore Hawkinson the rest of season when Hawkinson is in here. Obviously, Dallas Goedert has been phenomenal, but that was under the context with no A.J. Brown, with no Devonta Smith. So maybe it's going to be a little bit of a different story now that these receivers are back. So if you could potentially go through, cut Michael Wilson, cut Quentin Johnston, pick up Keon Coleman and TJ Hawkinson, or Keon Coleman and David Njoku, I think I'd be very interested in that. But at running back, obviously, we're golden here. We have Kamara, we have Taylor, we have Jacobs, we have Hunt, we have Brooks. So we have a really nice combination of elite talent at the top and depth with long-term upside as well. Going over to wide receiver, we have A.J. Brown, so top 5 wide receiver here. We have Kupp, who's going to be a top 12 wide receiver long-term. We should be possibly back week 7. We have Deebo Samuel, who looks like a borderline wide receiver 1. Obviously, as we discussed previously, the wide receiver depth does matter a bit more in this league. So I don't want to come out here and I don't want to say like, oh yeah, we need to go through and we need to look to sell Josh Downs and Kareem Hunt to get an upgrade. Now, we actually like holding on to this depth, and I think it's a big reason why we are 4-1 right now with these league settings. So I actually don't really look to make a trade, and I don't think we try to sell Dallas Goedert high unless you are packaging Goddard in a receiver like Josh Downs to get a better wide receiver. Because if you were to go ahead and do that, then you could just very easily roster both TJ Hawkinson and David Njoku and assume that we get tight end production out of one of those names. But not something you're having to do. Really, the only thing that I would probably strongly recommend here is cutting Michael Wilson, cutting Quentin Johnston, and picking up both Keon Coleman, and then your favorite guy between TJ Hawkinson and David Njoku. But thank you again. I really do appreciate you and really hope that I was able to help you out here. But obviously, it's a great team, much better team than my own, so it is hard to say too much. Now, going over to Dark Unix. Says, I don't know who to start. Many injuries. Also, somebody just dropped Jonathan Brooks. Who can I drop? We have Fab. Okay. So let's pick up who we are going to be dropping first. So no backup quarterback on the team. The worst option on this team, Jalen Tolbert. It's either Jalen Tolbert, Austin Eckler, or Braylon Allen. Let's see if we would actually need to start Jalen Tolbert, because I think Tolbert's the most appealing guy in the short term here. We're just thinking long-term upside. I think you go Garrett Wilson at wide receiver. A running back is going to be Bijan and Brees relatively easily. For the flex, Austin Eckler's the play if you have. Oh my gosh, this is going to be tough. Austin Eckler's the play if you have no Brian Robinson, but I'm assuming Brian Robinson's going to be playing again. Kind of same situation as last week where he didn't practice at all, but it is what it is. Looking at Jalen Tolbert versus Tank Dell, George Pickens, I'm probably going to prefer Dell. Let's double check the underdog projections of what you have this week with these guys. But we actually may need Tolbert this week. Obviously, it's a great matchup for Jalen Tolbert against the Lions. Tolbert's higher lower, 45.5 receiving yards. Dell's probably going to be a must-start guy. Yeah, Tank Dell's at 62.5. Dear God. If you have Tank Dell, you probably have to start him. If you want to say, oh, he hasn't hit this once, let's take the lower. You do you, but Tank Dell has to be in your starting lineup here. And then who is the other player we were considering? George Pickens. Pickens, higher, lower, 47.5 receiving yards. I'd probably prefer the matchup that you have with Tolbert, so I'm probably going Dell and Tolbert. Tight end, we go with Laporta over Kraft. Flex, honestly, it doesn't really matter. We're going to go right back to the wide receiver position. We're going to take Pickens. I'd probably drop Austin Eckler to go pick up Jonathan Brooks. My only hesitation is it's a tough spot considering that Brian Robinson's banged up. Jonathan Brooks is not back. He hasn't been activated to the 21-day, blah, blah, blah. So, I don't know. But Jonathan Brooks, in my mind, just has so much more long-term upside that I would rather have Brooks over Eckler if we don't need Eckler right now. JPG coming out with a trade question. We're 2-3 with Hawkinson and Pacheco already on IR. Is it worth it to take another guy in Cup that's currently injured? So this is a 10-team format. Actually, I can't say that for sure. It doesn't not look like it's linked. So good news, bad news here. Good news is it sounds like Cooper Kupp will possibly be back after the bye week in week 7. And if that were to occur, then Cooper Kupp is more likely than not immediately a wide receiver 1. Bad news is if you make this trade, you're giving up CeeDee Lamb. This is one of those great examples of a trade where I wish I could look at the roster. I wish I could go through and see what kind of depth that we need. What side would y'all take in the chat? Are you going to go CeeDee Lamb or Cooper Kupp, Marvin Harrison? Without being able to see the roster and knowing that you have Hawkinson and Pacheco already injured, I probably go Lamb. But if this was like a 12-team format with multiple flex spots where I needed the depth, like if this was the flock league, I'd rather have Kupp and Harrison. But if this is like a 10-team league, then I'd rather have Lamb. So I wish we had linked the team so I could know. Let's see. Kupp. Oh, I didn't even, let me pull this up. Sorry. Lamb, Kupp, Lamb. Really depends, but Lamb, that's where I'm at. I think it really depends, but you can say Lamb if we have to. We have to do something. If it's like a 12-team league with 2 flex spots, which is like the league settings for the league I play in, the flock league, I would rather have the Cooper Kupp, Marvin Harrison side. But if this is like a 10-team format where you already have a couple players on the IR, then I could see taking CeeDee Lamb. But next time, if you link your team, I can actually look at all the rosters underneath here on this page. JN in the chat. Big day tomorrow. Big day. I will actually be watching the UT game start to finish tomorrow. And I'll be wearing my Arch Manning jersey. But let's check out this trade for JMA Reed. This is a deal where we are sending Pitts for Laporta to get a tight end upgrade. We are going from Terry to Olave to get a wide receiver upgrade. I'm sorry. I know people are going to hate to hear it. I know people are going to really want me to say that Terry McLaurin is better than Chris Olave here rest of season. I would definitely say Terry McLaurin's better than Olave right now with no Derek Carr, but Derek Carr is not going to be out for too long. Can we take a... I actually don't know the answer to this question. Can we all take a guess in the live chat right now? From a points per game, full PPR perspective, what wide receiver ranking do you think Terry McLaurin is in points per game? Full PPR points per game, what do you think Terry McLaurin is? Is he the wide receiver 5, the wide receiver 10, the wide receiver 15, the wide receiver 20, the wide receiver 25, the wide receiver 30, the wide receiver 35, the wide receiver 40? Because we all know that Terry McLaurin has had the best quarterback play of his entire career. We all know that Jayden Daniels has been immaculate. But where is McLaurin right now in fantasy football points per game? 28, 18, 12, top 20, 23, 11, 19, 16, 21, 16, 16, 5, 23, 20. Not a single person is close. 17 to 25, 24, 27, 33. This is by far and away the closest guess. Everybody was assuming that Terry McLaurin has been a top 20 receiver, because Terry McLaurin has a good PR team. I'll tell you that much. In fantasy football, there's very few players with a better PR team than Terry McLaurin. Chris Olave has been a bum as well if you're looking at this, so I don't want to overreact. But Terry McLaurin, wide receiver 32 in points per game. Here's the data. Here are the players. Y'all can check this out. And this has been with Jayden Daniels absolutely crushing it. So, and we talked about this in the sell high video with McLaurin as well. In that Jayden Daniels is great from a real life perspective. It couldn't be more exciting to watch the Washington Commanders. Jayden Daniels is elite in fantasy as well. But the Commanders are averaging fewer passing yards per game this season than they did last year. It doesn't mean Jayden Daniels is bad. Jayden Daniels is phenomenal. It just means that typically that playing style, look at Lamar Jackson, doesn't support top wide receivers in fantasy. So, I don't know. For me personally, I probably go the little Laporta side here, but I'll also admit at the same time that I think the value lies on the McLaurin side. I think most people would prefer McLaurin. But this is filled out as if it's a 10-team league. So let's go over to Sam Latina. A wide receiver, we have no Tyreek Hill this week. No Puka Nacua. Legette's fully good to go, but I think you go Jalen Tolbert in a great matchup here. I think we probably go with the fully healthy Legette as well. 2 weeks ago when he was fully healthy, he had 10 targets. For the flex, no Tyreek, no Roshan, no Brooks. This is ugly. No Blake Corum, no Puka Nacua. I think you go Austin Eckler and probably Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen has not hit double-digit fantasy points in any game. In any game this year. But still. Bulldog LLC says Scary Terry is top 10 rest of season. This is my favorite Scary Terry stat. Terry McLaurin is 29 years old, and he's never had a finish higher than the wide receiver 20 from a points per game perspective in a full PPR league. If you look at points per game, Terry McLaurin's never been higher than wide receiver 20 in fantasy, and he's 29 years old. He has phenomenal PR. Jayden Daniels is great. But I don't know. Like, again, if you look at the actual passing volume, it has not been there. It hasn't. Okay. Like this. Brandon says, I like Terry, but just traded him to get Achan. Like, I love that move. I love that. Okay, let's move this over to Ant Gardido, something like that, says, I have Travis Etienne. Should I trade Najee to get Tank as my handcuff? No. So if you are trading to handcuff your running backs, you're going through and saying, I just want the highest floor possible. I'm not trying to win. I'm just trying not to lose. I would just rather have Najee Harris. Where obviously Bigsby maybe a more talented running back than Najee. But ultimately, at the end of the day, Najee has the workload. He's averaging 20 opportunities a game. And having ET in here doesn't change the fact that I think Najee's the best value in the deal. I'm going to be on record saying that there's a good shot that Tank Bigsby's a more talented player than Najee Harris. But for fantasy football purposes, if you're going to get 20 opportunities a game, just give me Najee. Okay. Now, PurDeez Nuts coming out. Second team in the league analyzer. This is about a grouping of 5. Really appreciate you. Going to be excited to check this squad out for you. Says, I'm currently 3rd in the league at 4-1, but I think I need to do something extra in order to be in contention to win this year. Any roster/trade advice would be much appreciated. All right, let's go ahead and let's check it out. So this is a 14-team format, ladies and gentlemen. 14-team league, depth's going to matter more. 2-for-1 deals are going to be a little bit less appealing, specifically because the options on the waiver wire will be worse. But we can go ahead and look at this. Yeah, looking at the waiver wire options, actually, they're not that bad. I would drop Romeo Dobbs for Christian Watson. Personally, I would. But that's just me. But anyway, quarterback, we are elite. We have Jaden Daniels. You start him every single week, regardless of the matchup. You don't need a backup. In a 14-team league, maybe you can go grab a backup just because the options on the waiver wire are going to be worse. And if a lot of people are rostering backup quarterbacks in a 14-team format, there won't be many. Yeah, like looking at the waiver wire quarterbacks, you just have Lawrence, Tua, Carr, Stafford, Levis, Dalton. I'm assuming because Tua is on the waiver wire. Actually, no, never mind. Ignore me. We're not even going to go down that road. I was going to say, maybe your league doesn't have a league IR spot, but if it does, pick him up, put him in the IR, but we have Pacheco there anyway. So ignore me. I think we're fine at quarterback. Going over to running back, here we have pretty much just 2 RB2s for a 14-team league in Tony Pollard, Rico Dowdle, possibly 3 RB2s if you throw Chase Brown in here as well. Obviously, the main issue that you had with the squad is the Isaiah Pacheco injury just hurts a ton. But this is a half PPR format as well, where typically in a half PPR league, you're maybe going to be a little bit more skewed to thinking to throw a running back in that flex. But I would love to upgrade running back if possible. It just comes down to how we possibly could do it. Running back, Jalen Warren, Trey Benson are by far and away the most appealing names on the waiver wire. Obviously, if you wanted to have Ty Chandler over them, which I have Ty Chandler ranked over both of them right now, based off the Aaron Jones injury, completely understandable. But because it's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, if you wanted to go through and drop Romeo Dobbs to pick up Jalen Warren, with Warren sounding like he may be healthy and he may be coming back in here in Pittsburgh, that is something that we can consider. Definitely not something that we have to do. Going over to wide receiver, we have St. Brown, but the Tua injury really impacts us with Jalen Waddle here. We have Terry, JSN, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, effectively until Tua comes back in. It's a 14-team format, so the wide receiver depth does matter a little bit more. I think once Tua comes back in and Jalen Waddle yet again is a player that is a must-start option every single week, then at that point, I think we really could explore the possibility of maybe trading Terry McLaurin and Tony Pollard to get a running back upgrade, or Jackson Smith-Njigba and Rico Dowdle to get an RB upgrade. Because looking at your waiver wire here, it's not like this is a garbage waiver wire situation. Like you said, you can pick up Jalen Warren. But I don't think you can afford to sell one of these receivers until you have Tua back for Waddle, and Tua is supporting Waddle as a low-end wide receiver 1 in a 14-team format. I think he can be that. And then going over to what we have at tight ends, we are currently sitting with Laporta. Laporta's through the bye. I think you can't start him every single week regardless. I'm trying to think if there's anything that you could reasonably do knowing that this is a 14-team league. Obviously, it's a great team in a 14-team league. We're 4-1 despite the Pacheco injury, despite the Tua injury impacting Waddle. We're already through the St. Brown bye. We're already through the Laporta bye. We're already through the Tony Pollard bye. I think it's a great squad. The only thing I would potentially consider doing here is I think that we would probably look to drop Romeo Dobbs for a player like Christian Watson. That's my personal preference, but if you didn't want to do it, not going to fault you for it. And I think that I would probably, once you get Waddle back in, consider moving JSN or Terry McLaurin with one of the running backs for an RB upgrade. But this is a great team overall, my friend. Let's move this over. And of course, if you wanted a team review, you could always get a team review, trade question, start sit question, whatever you're wanting, all through flockfantasy.com. You can find the link to flockfantasy.com in the live chat right now. Or if you just go over to the site, you can see that button in the top right corner that says expert advice. You can get a team review, trade question, start sit question, whatever you are wanting. Now, if you did want a team review, I would definitely recommend going with our promo that we have with Underdog Fantasy. It's going to be much cheaper and a much better value for you, to be honest. But yeah, if you go over to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, you will get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Not only will you get that deposit bonus, but at the same time, you will get a free Joe Burrow pick, more than less than half a total yard for the game on Sunday. And you'll get a free team review in the live streams that we are doing every single day. Just make sure that you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your Underdog Fantasy account. That way I'm able to credit you with that free team review voucher. But let's move this back over and dive into our next question here. It's going to be a trade question coming out from G. Wallace. Here we're looking at Achan, London, Terry versus Olave, Kyren, Amari. So going from Achan to Kyren, massive upgrade. London to Olave, pretty big downgrade. Terry to Amari, downgrade as well, unless you're expecting that you possibly have the pivot over to Jameis Winston, where if you do give Jameis Winston the job there in Cleveland, then there should be significant more passing volume for Amari Cooper here. I think when in doubt, you probably go with the best player. Kyren's fully healthy. Not only is Kyren healthy, but at the same time, the positive that you have with Kyren Williams is coming out of the bye week. Potentially this Rams offense is going to be a little bit healthier. We're going to have more trips to the red zone. We have more touchdown opportunities, sustained drives. In that instance, I think Kyren Williams can even get better. That's why he's up to RB2 in our rest of season ranks here. This is just tough because I think London's a strong option as well. Can I put this into the trade calculator on the site? Let me do that real quick. Can y'all also let me know in the chat, what side are you going to go with? I think it's a very interesting trade. Typically, in massive deals like this, I don't really see being win-win trades for multiple parties. But Kyren, Olave, Amari. For London, Achan, and Terry. So if we're using the expert values on the site, which is the average of all the creators, says it's a fair deal. My rankings say it's a fair trade as well. I just legitimately think it's a very fair trade. I think it's up to you. We got Achan side easy. London side, London. Achan side easy. London, London. Achan will get injured. London side easily. I don't know. When in doubt, if it's this close, just keep the side you have. Like, I don't see the point in making this deal, to be honest, even if Kyron's the best player in it. Now going over to our next team, is one of those free underdog teams with a Bucker's housewife. Says Happy VR Keeper League. Okay, so ignore the league analyzer in that case, because the league analyzer is going to be pulling in dynasty values. And in reality, we should probably be looking at redraft values, specifically if it's a keeper league where you keep like fewer than 5 players. Just traded Javonte for Pollard. I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know how either. I'd love to do that in my league. Feel like I need to cut the fat on this team, but struggle to get 2-for-1 deals accepted. JT has a week 14 bye, so need to move him out at some point. Good offer, Tank Bigsby for Nick Chubb. Thoughts on that and any other advice? I would way rather have Nick Chubb over Tank Bigsby. Do not be making that move. But let's go ahead and... I don't know why you have to move JT because he's a week 14 bye. That makes literally no sense for me. Oh, playoffs start week 13. Okay. Playoffs start week 13. There are a lot of teams with the week 14 bye. So I hate, and I mean I hate, it's the most ridiculous thing in the world if your league has a playoff system that starts before week 15. That's just garbage, to be honest. Y'all need it. The number one thing you need to be doing right now is going to your commish and telling them that, hey, we need to get this changed. That is horrendous. But quarterback, we are sitting with Josh Allen. It looks like maybe you already accepted the Bigsby trade, which I really don't like. Like, the thing with Tank Bigsby is obviously get the rushing touchdowns this past week. And I'll let you know, I have a ridiculous amount of round 18 Tank Bigsby and underdog draft. So if Bigsby crushes, your boy's printing money. I hope it happens. But the reality of the situation is, with Tank Bigsby, this is a running back that is in a 3-man running back by committee. I mean, Dearness Johnson's still getting usage. Bigsby's had 1 target all year. So since you've had 1 target all year from Bigsby, no usage as a receiver, Etienne has that role. Dearness Johnson still has a role. I don't know if we can be like consistently excited about Bigsby. But anyway, quarterback, we have Allen. With Allen, he's been super inconsistent, but I think he'll be better going into the future. We need the rushing touchdowns. I think you can trust him as a top 5 QB. Running back, we have Taylor, Aaron Jones, Pollard, Dobbins. So it's a great running back room overall. It's going back to it. I agree with you. If it is a league in which you're looking at, say, your playoffs starting week 13. Who all has the week 14 bye here? Houston has the week 14 bye. Baltimore has the week 14 bye. Indianapolis has the week 14 bye. Can y'all remind me in the chat as well? Who has the week 14 bye? But Taylor does for sure. JSN, I think, is week 10. DJ Moore, I think, is week 7. Khalil Shakir is week 12. Josh Allen's week 12. Dalton Kincaid's week 12. Bigsby's week 12. Dobbins is week 5. Pollard's week 5. Aaron Jones week 6. Taylor week 14. That's all off the top of my head, so hopefully I'm not incorrect with that. But yeah, really Taylor would be the only guy that we are trying to get off of. And to be honest, the earlier the better in that, before your league mates really begin to think about the playoffs and the bye week implications. Especially as well because you are a 2-3 team where, I mean, you kind of need to be winning games right now. And we are missing time from Jonathan Taylor, of course, where if you could potentially make a 2-for-1 deal, it's a 10-team league where you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, where if you could take, say, DJ Moore and Jonathan Taylor and maybe get to Saquon Barkley, get to Kyron Williams, I think that'd make a lot of sense here for a roster in which we just kind of need to get off of the week 14 bye. Barkley, obviously, the week 5 bye. Kyron, the week 6. And selling the wide receiver depth piece like DJ Moore isn't going to be the end of the world when we have Brown through the bye. We have Olave and JSN. Maybe it's a spot in which you decide to wait until we get Derek Carr back so Chris Olave is viable again. Going over to tight end, we have Kincaid. We can still start Kincaid weekly. Definitely not nearly as excited about it as we were previously. But yeah, I agree with you. One, I don't love the Nick Chubb trade we made. And two, I think the main thing that you're wanting to do is pivot off of Taylor where you can. Once we get Olave back in, then maybe going through and trading someone like JSN and Taylor to pivot over to a running back that's in that tier above where you don't have to worry about a bye week during the playoffs for you. But I appreciate you. Outside of that, the team's really solid. There's not much to discuss. And like I said, I'm sorry, but please ignore the league analyzer with this league because it is a keeper league where we are pulling in the dynasty values for the league analyzer, whereas we should definitely be treating it a little bit more like a redraft league. Now let's move this over to our next question. This is going to be from Rice. Says, I'm dead last in the league, 3-7. Obviously, we have a game against the median. So if we are dead last, we need to be thinking about getting production in right this second. Mixon's going to be playing this week. So we're no longer in a situation where we have to think, oh, okay, we have to get out on Joe Mixon. But David Montgomery is through the bye. So obviously with Montgomery being through the bye, you are going to get the extra game. I think going from Mixon to Montgomery is a clear downgrade. Going from Kincaid to McBride is a clear upgrade. But honestly, I think it's kind of up to you on this. I understand if you're dead last in the league, you're saying, I need the points now. I need to make sure that Mixon doesn't start off slow. And clearly you get a big time upgrade from Kincaid to McBride. So I think we're going to go with the McBride Montgomery side. Now going over to Todd's question. This is a trade question where we are sending Dowdle for Brown, lateral move, slight downgrade. London for Harrison, lateral move, slight downgrade. Jacobs for Mixon, lateral move, slight upgrade. So to be honest with you, I personally think that this is a very fair trade where you can make an argument either way. We can go use the trade calculator on the sites and we can figure this out as well. And obviously the trade calculator on flogfantasy.com is free for y'all if y'all wanted to look at it. Rico Dowdle, London. Yeah, we have a bunch of free tools on flogfantasy.com for everyone. The main thing I would recommend is the My Teams page, though, because one, it's really cool to see your league in that format. And two, also, actually, the waiver wire filtering is way better than at least what I've seen with Sleeper, which is the platform that I play on. And then it's, who's the other guy? Chase Brown? Yeah, Chase Brown. Okay. I am 99% sure that this is going to say fair trade. If it doesn't, we got to tinker with the trade calc. Yep, says fair trade. Let's just make sure. Is this refreshing? Let's get rid of London. What does it say once you get rid of London? We need to go through and refresh this. Okay, I'm not going to refill that out. We got a stale page. Oh, dear God, embarrassing. But anyway, it's a super fair deal. It's up to you. I probably prefer Mixon now that he's back and when we expect Harrison to improve in the long term. But it is a very fair trade. Okay. Now moving this over to Trevor. It says, I need a flex option. The waiver wire has Sermon and Slayton right now. What do you think? Not interested in Slayton. Sermon maybe. For our flex plays, we're looking at Downs, Rome, Tracy, Bigsby, Cup, Christian Watson, Neighbors, Waddle. Obviously no Waddle, Neighbors, CMC, Cup this week. So to these options, I would rather have Sermon. Drop Tracy and put Sermon in. And if you can no longer get Sermon or somebody bids more, then you're going to go ahead and you're going to take Josh Downs. But I think plan A is you drop Tracy and you pick up Sermon. Now, Elias coming out with a trade question. It says, trade happened where we received Amon-Ra St. Brown, Cup plus Brooks in the IR, non-PPR PPR, running backs are Saquon and Williams. So looking at this deal where we move from Amon-Ra St. Brown to Mike Evans, massive downgrade. Now, it's not as big of a downgrade in the non-PPR format as it would be in a full PPR, but it's still a pretty big downgrade. Going from Bucky Irving to Chuba Hubbard, upgrade Waddle to Kyler. In non-PPR format, Waddle's less appealing. You probably prefer Kyler. Now that you have the Rachaad White injury and Bucky Irving looks very similar to Chuba Hubbard, and you saw the outside shot that you are going to be getting in a Mr. Jonathan Brooks into Carolina, I personally would probably prefer just sticking with the best player in Amon-Ra St. Brown. If it was a full PPR format, it would be an absolute no-brainer for me. And a non-PPR league, it's closer, but it still probably goes St. Brown. Now, Beefy Slim, appreciate you. Going to be excited to check this out. Says, sup, Mason? Love the content, man. I'm a first-year flocker, but long-time fantasy manager and winner. Hell yeah. FYI, Kate Otten was a desperation ad with Kelsey on bye and Hawkinson still on the IR. Had to drop Bucky. Oh, that is brutal. But hopefully he'll be back on the squad after week 6 finishes. Based off the Rachaad White news, unless you're going to be aggressive with Bucky Irving on the fab, low probability is back on your squad, my guy. Low probability. Now, good news with that is we are the number 1 team with the league analyzer. Pretty big gap between the haves and the haves not in this league, where you can go through and look at a team at the bottom. How is this team 4-1? It's 4-1 team at the bottom. Their wide receiver 3 is Mooney. Their running back 3 is Spears. That's crazy. Our squad, we're 3-2. Much better team in general. Quarterback, we are sitting with Joe Burrow. Obviously, having Burrow here looks like he could potentially lead the NFL in passing touchdowns and passing yards. 4-point passing touchdown format. The rushing upside may be a little bit limited, so I don't want to be ranking him ahead of like Daniels or Lamar by any stretch of the imagination. But still definitely a quarterback that you can be excited about. Running back, we have Derrick Henry, Devon Achane. So short term, we have an RB1. Long term, we have 2 RB1s. We should be thinking long term with this team with how good it is. Zach Moss, Rico Dowdle, Chase Brown, quality depth. You're saying that we had to drop Bucky. Maybe you immediately went and picked Bucky Irving back up because he's on the squad here. But if Bucky Irving is out there on the waiver wire, for the love of God, go through and get Bucky Irving back on this team. If we can cancel that drop and instead drop Keenan Allen, please. Please drop Keenan Allen before you drop Bucky Irving. What I should probably do as well is I should probably move Bucky Irving up our rest of season ranks with this Rachaad White injury. I mean, at minimum, now you are getting at least 1 week as a starter here. I think Bucky flips, and I would probably move Rachaad White down to about RB34. Ramondre probably gets moved down to about RB33. And with the news that Jonathan Brooks may be missing a little more time than expected, I think Chuba moves up. Yeah, but the last thing I would want to be doing here is dropping Bucky Irving for damn sure. Wide receiver, we have 2 wide receiver 1s in the long term with Chase and Cooper Kupp. Looking at what you have with Chris Olave, Roma Dunze, Ladd McConkey, all these wide receivers are better long-term options than they are short-term. Obviously, the rookies aren't providing much right now. Olave, a wide receiver that you're dealing with a quarterback injury for. We're not going to be expecting much when it comes to the passing volume in this New Orleans Saints offense. And then going over to tight end, we have Kelsey, Hawkinson, and Kate Otten. I'm trying to think of what you could possibly be doing here. The only thing I could possibly have for you is, for the love of God, don't drop Bucky. But it's a 3-2 team where we have a ridiculous amount of long-term value. The only thing I would say is, obviously, once Hawkinson comes in, if you are able to potentially sell Hawkinson and a wide receiver depth piece to go get an upgrade there with your wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3, we definitely would. And then also, when you drop Cade Otton, if we have an open roster spot, I think Keon Coleman is probably worth a look. But obviously, we need a tight end to play this week, so we have to hold on to Cade. But I really appreciate you, and I think it's a great team, but it's a team where you're set up in the long haul, and we're going to be struggling in the short term. So really, the only thing you have to do in my mind is sit here and be patient and let the wide receivers get better as the year goes on. And obviously, Devon Achane will get better as well. Now, Dan Orkeed coming out says, Happy BR, Olave's quarterback with last week's game. Waivers are limited. We have Slayton Tolbert or bench options. If I was looking at what we are potentially going to do here off the waiver wire, I think you go Tolbert. Chuba Hubbard is somebody that you absolutely have to start in the flex. Between Olave, Myers banged up. I don't really have much interest with Myers. Ford, Madison, you could consider. But Jalen Tolbert this week does have a really strong matchup going up against the Detroit Lions. While at the same time, you still have no Brandon Cooks here. But you know what? I probably go Ford and hope that you get the receiving usage. Obviously, Tolbert coming off a monstrous week. It's not super easy to say it. But also, if you were to go through and if you were... You know what? I will pick up Tolbert right now, though. I mean, cut Zamir White, pick up Jalen Tolbert right this second. But I think you still possibly play the running back instead. Especially on a team where we are this strong. So we maybe should just be looking for a little more security. But let's pivot over and answer some of the free questions that we have in the live chat. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. We'd be happy to answer as many as we possibly can. Raviel says, can't wait for the Nick Chubb comeback. I mean, it is positive, of course, that Nick Chubb did practice last week and this week. Now, I don't want to sit here and act like Nick Chubb's crushing by any stretch of the imagination. He's going to miss this week. And he's in a bad offense at the same time. Okay. Now, Max says, trade Harrison for Achane. Probably not. As I mean, you're banking on the long-term upside with both these players, but at least one gives you short-term production. So I think if I had Harrison, I'd probably just keep Harrison. I think Harrison's still a wide receiver, a low-end wide receiver one rest of season. Michael says, why do you hate Shaheed? I don't think any New Orleans Saints receiver is startable in New Orleans until you get Derek Carr back in. Then at that point, it looks like Shaheed's definitely a very exciting option. But I mean, going through and just getting some realistic expectations of what you should have for this Saints offense with Rattler under center. Right now, Spencer Rattler's higher, lower 190.5 passing yards. Olave's higher, lower 47.5 receiving yards. Shaheed's higher, lower 44.5 receiving yards. These aren't projections for receivers that you want to start. This isn't an offense that you want many pieces of outside of this man right here in Alvin Kamara. Like, if you love Shaheed, by all means, go say he's going to have 40 receiving yards this week. Good luck. I'm not saying he won't, but I'm not saying it's a no-brainer here. Like, let's move this over. Van says, Jordan Mason for Tyreek. I'm 4-1. For the love of God, get Tyreek Hill here. Jordan Mason's value could go poof and disappear any week. You get one report saying, oh, McCaffrey's going to be activated a couple weeks from now. So it's not even that his value goes poof the second that McCaffrey's back. The value goes poof the second that you get any positive news on McCaffrey. Lucas says, Bucky, Irving, or James Conner. I still probably go James Conner. Let me see. Where did we end up updating our rankings with Bucky? Week 6, we put Bucky Irving here as a mid RB2. Definitely somebody I want to start for sure. Do they have picks out for Bucky yet? Oh, they have Bucky Irving higher, lower, 84.5 total yards. Swift's higher, lower, 79.5 total. Bucky a little more likely to score a touchdown. Swift higher, lower, 11.75 fantasy points. Bucky, do they have a fantasy points mark out? I don't think so. I think maybe we move Brian Robinson behind both of them now that you get the news that Brian Robinson is a game time decision. But yeah, I think Bucky Irving is that mid RB2. Between him and Swift, it's going to be close because Swift is a really good matchup. But if it's like James Conner, who's been giving you low-end RB1 production pretty much consistently outside of every game but the Detroit one, I think you just go with the safety here of James Conner. Okay. Let's move this over. Got Juice says, start Jameson or Brian Thomas. You have to go Brian Thomas for sure. Please go Brian Thomas. Bradshaw says start Ray Davis or Antonio Gibson. If James Cook is out, I would rather go with Ray Davis. Ray Davis will be in the better offense. I think Antonio Gibson will be a safer play for touches, but there's just going to be a massive gap between the total points scored in Buffalo and in New England, at least according to Las Vegas sportsbooks. My thing with Ray Davis is if you look at the Ty Johnson usage, it probably is sticky where Ty Johnson is going to have a role in this offense. Let's update the rankings on the site under the assumption that James Cook's missing this week. James Cook hasn't practiced a single time this week, so we'll put Cook down here at the bottom with Taylor. And let's update Ray Davis. Obviously, tomorrow, if we get positive James Cook news, we can change this around. But Ray Davis this week moves up to rather have him over Zeke, rather have him over Hill, Wilson, Spears, Algier, Braylon Allen, Charbonnet, Bigsby, Roshan, Eckler, Madison, Javonte, Sermon, Gibson. Probably move Ray Davis right behind Chase Brown. I don't think Ray Davis sees every touch in this offense. It's going to be a better offense than what you have in New England. And then Ty Johnson. I mean, honestly, past like RB50 in the rankings, I don't even look at. Like, I don't even really care about. Because I'm assuming nobody's looking at options this gross. Well, we need to move Gus Edwards down, though. Gus Edwards is not going to be playing. Ty Johnson, I'd probably put ahead of Zeke. Probably have him right behind like Hill, Emmanuel Wilson, Spears, Algier. I'd probably rather have actually him over Emmanuel Wilson. But yeah, I don't think Ray Davis is some must-start running back. The running backs stepping into starting jobs that are must-start options for me this week. I mean, really the main guy is Bucky Irving. Like, Bucky Irving will be that must-start dude. Okay. But let's move this over and let's get some more of the questions that we have on the sites. And of course, if you want to check out any of the rankings that we have on the site, they are all over there on flockfantasy.com. You can look at the expert rankings for free always. If you wanted to look at my rankings, those will be behind a paywall. But if you are a paid member of the site, just hit expert, Mason Dodd. Then you can go ahead and sort by myself. And also, if you wanted to go ahead and ask a question over on flockfantasy.com, you can at any time. Just hit the button in the top right corner that says expert advice, or you can click the link in the live chat that says ask a question here. And then you get a start sit question, trade question, or a personalized team review. If you wanted a team review, I would definitely recommend taking advantage of the promo that we have over on Underdog Fantasy. It'll be a much better value and it'll be much cheaper. Or if you go over to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, you'll get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. And at the same time, you'll be getting a free Joe Burrow pick, more than less than half total yard for the Sunday game, and a free team review in the live streams that we're doing every single night. Just make sure that you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog. But let's move this back over and get to our next question here in M. Gutierrez. This is a team review. Laporta Potty, appreciate you. I will say, we've seen 100 versions of this name. We got to come up with a new team name, my guy. But anyway, going to be excited to check it out. And actually, no, our team name is here. We're 6. I was going to say maybe change your team name already. I'm currently 2-3, feeling like my team is loving the IR, and moves need to be made to make the playoffs. Started off 0-3. Well, congrats on the 2-game win streak. Traded Bijan for London and Gibbs. Unbelievable trade. That's what got me the 2 wins. Do we like any trades from here, or do we need to be making a move with an IR piece? So going through and pulling up the squad, we are currently 2-3, but 2-3 is not a spot where you just need to be super desperate to go find it. But no, 2-3, I mean, you're well balanced. We win this week. We are 500. It's not like we're a long shot to make the playoffs by any stretch of the imagination. Looking at quarterback, we are effectively just streaming here between Cousins and Rodgers, playing the matchups every week. I wouldn't mind if you wanted to go through and pick up Lawrence, have Lawrence instead of Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, just a personal preference thing or whatever you want. Going over to running back, you're in a really good situation in which we have Gibbs holding down the position. And then beyond that, we have long-term upside, but we don't have a consistent RB2. Where you have Jonathan Brooks, long-term upside piece. We have Javonte as a depth piece that we can play in the short term as we wait. We have Charbonnet, Braylon Allen, Tank Bigsby as the premium handcuff running backs. It's a league in which you only have to start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. So we kind of get lucky to have Gibbs here, and a league format where we don't have to worry about depth that much. Going over to wide receiver, we are currently sitting with Drake London, Nico Collins, Puka Nacua, T. Higgins, DeAndre Hopkins, as well as Jerry Jeudy. So one thing that I would do here is I'd cut Jeudy with how bad this Cleveland offense is. Really, the only instance in which I would not cut Jerry Jeudy is if you thought that you were going to get Jameis Winston under center and the passing volume was going to be dramatically higher. But I mean, we have no Nico Collins. We have no Puka Nacua. So we kind of need the depth right now. So we're having to start London, Higgins, and then possibly Hopkins in the flex. Going over to tight end, we have Sam Laporta. So if we map this out and try to figure out when we are going to be getting a solid wide receiver back here, you probably get back Puka Nacua in about 3 to 4 weeks from what I've read. Jonathan Brooks, 3 to 4 weeks as well, which will just bolster out the depth here a ton. Obviously, the goal is if we can make it to the playoffs, then at that point, we just have an absolute crusher with Nico Collins coming in. I think what we do with this, you can't afford to make a trade with this team, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously, if you get if you get like a monstrous no-brainer type trade like your Bijan Robinson one, then we take it. But if we're sitting here with no trades where we can rob our league mates, I think you're just going to have to be waiting until we get Puka Nacua and or Nico Collins back in, till we get Jonathan Brooks back in. I think what you can look to do is you can definitely look to cut Rodgers now that we actually see all the injuries that we have to this roster. With all these injuries, it will be extremely important to find a potential wide receiver off the waiver wire. So I would drop Rodgers. We're never going to play him over Cousins anyway. Pick up Christian Watson and just commit to streaming QB. And then obviously Laporta, we don't need a backup option already through the bye week. And we're not going to be ever starting someone like Kate Otten over him. So I really only go through and drop Aaron Rodgers for Christian Watson. That's the only thing that I do with this team. Outside of that, if you're like 1-4, I'd be a lot more willing to just say, hey, burn it down, sell Nico Collins for what you can get. But I think the team's good enough to survive and possibly scrape by until we get back Brooks, Collins, and Puka. So we just want to be building out depth here with someone like Christian Watson. But thank you again. I really do appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way. And yeah, that I wish I had more for you, but I think you just got to practice some patience here with this team. Now, our next squad's going to be from one of those free Underdog team reviews. This is Touchdown GPT. Says, not sure where to go from here. Need help at quarterback and running back for sure. Any trades we should make or advice there? So this is a league where we are pretty far down in the league analyzer in comparison to the top two squads. So don't love to see it. It's a league in which you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. So the wide receiver depth isn't super important. Starting off at quarterback, we are streaming QBs weekly. We have Justin Fields here. Looking at the other quarterbacks on the waiver wire, I actually think that Anthony Richardson may be an interesting pickup in which you don't need to start him over Fields this week, but we can go ahead and grab him and see if we have any upside here for the long term if things can change in Indianapolis. But that's not our number one priority, right? I mean, whoever you decide to stream at quarterbacks, whoever you decide to stream at quarterback. Going over to running back, we are sitting with Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet, Tyrone Tracy, and Tank Bigsby. This is a garbage running back team. Running back room. Obviously, we are extremely excited about having Kenneth Walker at the top end. But beyond that, the depth is horrendous. Now, with that being said, you're a lucky son of a gun, and you have great options on the waiver wire that you can get for effectively free. Going through and looking at running backs that you have on waivers, Chase Brown, Braylon Allen, Roschon Johnson. So I would go through, I would cut Tracy, I would cut Bigsby, I would pick up Chase Brown, Braylon Allen. I think Chase Brown would immediately start on this team as your RB2. And honestly, I don't even think it's a controversial take here. Going over to wide receiver, we have the elite guy at the top with CeeDee Lamb. But beyond that, we are lacking a decent amount of help here below, where Adams obviously is nothing in the short term. Olave is not playable in the short term with no Derek Carr. Waddle's not playable in the short term with no Tua. Ladd McConkey is a long-term option to continue to get better here. So looking at your depth at wide receiver, I think this may be a team that honestly has to look to sell Davante Adams low. I think you have to may pivot over to another low-end wide receiver too that's just going to be playable for you, as these other guys aren't. Looking at wide receiver options, you do have interesting players off the waiver wire, such as Keon Coleman. So, I mean, obviously, another thing that you could consider here is if you're able to take Davante Adams and Zach Charbonnet and pivot over and get an upgrade at wide receiver or an upgrade at running back that excites you, I think that would be very interesting just to get some production in here right now when we're dealing with so many injuries with this team. And that will give us the ability to open up another roster spot and pick up a player like Keon Coleman for absolutely free. And then going over to tight end, we have Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts isn't much better than a streaming option. Like if Evan Ingram does go out there and crush this week in London, I think you could look at picking up Evan Ingram. But with the lack of depth that we have at running back and receiver, I wouldn't roster 2 tight ends or 2 quarterbacks with this team. Main thing is today, right this second, you cut Tracy and Bigsby and you pick up Chase Brown and Braylon Allen. And we need to move Tyron Tracy down our rest of season ranks. Let's do that now that it looks like Devin Singletary is not going to be missing much time. Tracy, I think it said we had him at RB 43. I'd prefer pretty much all these running backs over Tracy. Tracy plummets down here to about RB 52. Honestly, I'd rather have Benson over him. I'll put him down here at RB 54. But yeah, please cut Tracy for damn sure. And outside of that, I don't think that there are too many moves that you need to be making. Obviously, it's just such a brutal spot when we lose Adams. We don't lose Olave or Waddle, but we lose their quarterbacks. So we are just kind of waiting in limbo with these receivers. Now, going over to the next question, it's going to be a trade from Ethan. Here we're trading Chuba Hubbard, Brian Thomas for Tyreek Hill, Ray McLeod. Ray McLeod is legitimately a 0. He's not even worth the roster spot. I would cut him once you get him. But with that being said, I would rather have Tyreek Hill over the combo of Brian Thomas and Chuba Hubbard under the assumption it's a redraft format and under the assumption that we are looking at a long-term team where maybe we're 3-2, 4-1, really anything but 0-5. A-Rod says Tracy just had 130 yards. He did, but it was in the context of no Devin Singletary. Once you get Singletary back in, are you excited about Tracy in an offense with Devin Singletary playing? Personally, I am not, my friend. Personally, I'm not excited about the backup running back for the New York Giants. It also is kind of in a committee with Eric Gray, even if Singletary were to go down. Now, obviously, you're excited about Tracy if Singletary is not a thing, but it looks like Singletary is trending towards being good to go. Now, the Soaring Eagle coming out with a start-sit question. Wide receiver, we're looking at Downs, Keon, Jameson. Obviously, no Nico, no Justin Jefferson. So here, I think you go Jameson Williams and Josh Downs. If you have Anthony Richardson as the starting quarterback in Indy and Michael Pittman Jr. play, then at that point, I think you could pivot over to Keon Coleman. QB2, we will go A-Rich over Jared Goff if it's a 4-point passing touchdown format, especially if we had Geno good to go. I mean, if we had Geno at quarterback and Jordan Mason at running back, probably chasing the higher ceiling. 6-point passing touchdown league, you go Goff. And then looking at the flex spot here, I'd probably go ahead and take Travis Etienne under the assumption that he is good to go in this London game. Obviously, tough matchup, and he has been very bad this season. Now, Chris the GOAT coming out with one of those free Underdog team reviews says, had Rice, but also got offered Hill for either Brian Robinson or Josh Jacobs. Trade Brian Robinson for Tyreek Hill right this second. Also love the content, brother. Much love, my friend. Thank you. This is the 07 Patriots. Legendary. 5-0. Oh, hell yes. Love to see it. 5-0 team. We're definitely thinking more so long-term, right? I know that we have Puka Nacua on the squad. I know we already have a team that's constructed for that long-term build. But yeah, I mean, trading Brian Robinson, especially when you have enough running back production here with Kenneth Walker and Josh Jacobs to get Tyreek Hill, should be a no-brainer for a team that is situated in which the long-term upside is what matters most. Now, looking at the quarterbacks that we have on the waiver wire, right now we are sitting with Goff, Darnold, Lawrence, Tua, Daniel Jones, Herbert, Rodgers. So, I mean, you do have like really exciting options like Jared Goff that I think could be more valuable than Caleb Williams. For me, does that mean that we should go through and cut Caleb Williams to pick up Jared Goff? No, not really. But instead, what I'm probably doing here is I would probably just cut Caleb Williams and only roster one quarterback. Because if you decide, oh, okay, I don't want to I don't know. I don't want to play Justin Fields anymore, then you're really going to be streaming between Caleb, Goff, Darnold anyway. So it's not like rostering Caleb does much for you unless you wanted to play Caleb over Fields this week. So I'd cut Caleb when you have those quarterbacks on waivers. I'd go pick up Keon Coleman off the waiver wire relatively easily. Going over to running back, we have plenty of production to go around. Top end running back room looks great with Kenneth Walker, Josh Jacobs, Brian Robinson, Zach Charbonnet. The bottom depth looks good with Charbonnet, Austin Eckler. So yeah, to go through and trade away Brian Robinson for Tyreek Hill, I think it's definitely something that you can look to do. The only question at that point is, would you prefer maybe picking up Keon Coleman, or would you prefer maybe picking up, say, Roschon Johnson? I'd probably still go Keon, but then if we have Tyreek coming in, we have Lamb, Tyreek, Puka. So for the long term, which is what we're focusing on with a 5-0 team, we possibly have the wide receiver 1 and the wide receiver 2 in fantasy, and then Puka Nacua in our flex. And then Ladd McConkey, Josh Downs, phenomenal wide receiver room. Tight end, we have the tight end 1 in fantasy with Travis Kelce. I think you go ahead and you cut Cade Otton after the Kelce bye, and you look to pick up one of those exciting flex plays, whether that's DeAndre Hopkins, Juju Smith-Schuster, Xavier Legette, Christian Watson, maybe running back Roschon Johnson, Jalen Warren. I think it's up to you on who you end up wanting. But I think the move that we make right now is drop Caleb, pick up Keon, and then, trade Brian Robinson for Tyreek Hill if that deal's on the table for you. A great team. Now, Johnson coming out with a start-sit question. This is a start-sit where we really just need help with the flex. So looking at this, Zach Moss is good to go, which obviously does put a damper on Chase Brown. Amari Cooper is averaging close to 10 targets a game. However, it's just he's playing with the least efficient quarterback in the entire NFL at this point. So it is tough to trust him. I think I probably go ahead, and if it's a full PPR format, I probably just take Amari Cooper, knowing that you have a really tough matchup for Rico Dowdle. And at the same time, with Chase Brown, he is now officially back to backup duties because of the Zach Moss update. So it's close. It's not easy. If you wanted to go with someone other than Amari, it would be either Chase Brown or Rico Dowdle for me. Just Dowdle is a really tough matchup against the Lions. But let's move this over. Cora says, is Dontavian Wicks droppable at this point? I think that Wicks could be someone you let go of. If you were playing in like a 10-team league where you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, so the wide receiver depth wasn't super important. But this is still a Packers offense that projects to be one of the highest scoring offenses in the league. Particularly, a lot of that's going to be going through the air as well. Now, let's move this over to what we have with our next free Underdog team review. And of course, if y'all wanted to get one of these free Underdog team reviews, you can go to the link in the live chats to Underdog Fantasy and take advantage of the promo that we have with them, where if you go over there and use promo code FLOCK, and make a $10 deposit, you'll get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, you're going to be getting a free Joe Burrow pick, more than less than half a total yard for the Sunday game. And on top of that, you'll get a free team review in the live stream that we are doing every single night. So make sure you take advantage of that with the link in the live chat there. But let's move this over. This is Deputy Dong. This is the number 1 team with the league analyzer. Not even close. Says, well, I guess the second team's close. Beyond that, y'all are just crushing everybody else. Says, any moves you think we should make to set myself up rest of season while still being viable in the short term? Also, how's the start sit looking for the weekend? Thanks, Mason. Love the content. Keep it up. Thank you. So it is a league where we can start up to 4 receivers weekly. So the wide receiver depth does matter. I think we're going to go with Daniels here at quarterback over Baker, obviously. Beyond that, I think you're going to be going through and taking Gibbs, Kenneth Walker at running back. I'm assuming we probably already have. I'm assuming we started Jordan Mason as well. So in that case, if we have, say, 3 total receivers to choose from, I'm going to be going Amon-Ra St. Brown, Drake London, and I'll take Devonta Smith over Mike Evans, knowing that Evans does have a really tough matchup. Now, with all this being said, I think looking at what you have at quarterback, obviously, it's interesting in that you don't need to have a backup when you have Daniels. But at the same time, Baker's too good to cut. You throw in the fact that, I mean, it's a 10-team league, so nobody's going to trade for Baker. It's an interesting situation to be in. I think you're just kind of stuck as is. Now, running back, we are absolutely golden. I think this is a great example of a team in which we can afford to go and be elite at the onesies, where Rico Dowdle's our running back 5. I think if you can take Rico Dowdle and Tucker Kraft to go get an elite level tight ends, that would be an absolute no-brainer. Like going through and looking at some of the teams that actually may need some help at running back. I'm assuming that there are some in this league because we have all the running backs are on our own team. This team has Nick Chubb, Najee Harris, and Gus Edwards. Could we possibly get to George Kittle from them? Could you possibly take Kareem Hunt and Tucker Kraft and get to George Kittle? Even if it means we have to throw in Juju Smith-Schuster. Or even if it means we give them multiple running backs. We give them Kareem Hunt, Rico Dowdle, and Tucker Kraft to get to George Kittle. For you on your squad, it will never make a difference. On their squad, those running backs are going to make a massive difference. And the thing is, if you are able to make that 2-for-1 deal, then 3-for-1 deal even, at that point, looking at your waiver wire, you're able to get Zach Moss. You're able to get Bucky Irving for absolutely free. Like one thing that I would do right this second is I would cut Juju and pick up your favorite guy between Moss or Bucky. I would cut Baker and pick up the other one as well. Because, I know Baker's so damn good. You're just never starting him over Daniels. You have Goff. You have Justin Fields on the waiver wire as well. These running backs could be RB1s in fantasy depending on how their backfields shake out. So dropping Baker Mayfield, pick up Zach Moss, pick up Bucky Irving, use Kareem Hunt, Rico Dowdle as trade baits, get an elite tight ends. Wide receiver, it's a league where you can start 4 receivers weekly. Sorry, cut Baker and Juju and then pick up those 2 running backs. We have Evans, wide receiver 3, Smith, wide receiver 4, Olave, wide receiver 5. So honestly, I think there are no real trades to make outside of paying up for an elite tight end by selling one of the exciting running backs and at the same time just going through and picking up Moss and Bucky off the waiver wire for free. But yeah, great team, and it's a league that we are just crushing everybody else. Now, our next team is going to be Big Fat Chubb. Says I've done 2 previous trades. Preseason, we gave away Pickens and Rachaad White and received Waddle and Brian Robinson. Looks great. We gave away JSN and Connor and received Travis Kelce. Looking good right now. Right now, we are the 4th team in the league analyzer. It is a pretty even league overall. It's not like you have the juggernauts and the teams at the bottom that are garbage. Bucky Irving, first thing. Are we actually rostering Chris Evans? I don't know if the league analyzer is spazzing. I don't know if the league analyzer's having a bug. I know for whatever reason, some teams show that they have Freddie Swain on them when they don't. So if we're spazzing, if the league analyzer is spazzing here, ignore me. But if it's not, there's no reason you would ever roster Chris Evans. Cut him, pick up Bucky Irving. And if you don't have him, then honestly, cut Tank Bigsby and pick up Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving is the number one thing that you get right now with this squad. Quarterback, we have Josh Allen. So you are able to start Allen every week, regardless of the matchup. Clearly, he's been very inconsistent, but the ceiling that he gives you can't really be touched by many quarterbacks in fantasy. Going over to what you have with running backs here. You are looking at Bijan, Brian Robinson, Nick Chubb, Tank Bigsby. If you were to be able to go through and pick up Bucky Irving by dropping Tank Bigsby, it would put you in a spot in which it can be very comfortable to start Bucky Irving even if Brian Robinson misses, and just bank on the long-term upside of Chubb. Even if Rachaad White comes back in, maybe Bucky can cover until Chubb is back. Going over to receiver, we have Evans, Reed, Waddle, Worthy, Darnell, Keon Coleman. It's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league. So if possible, like if you're able to go through and sell Mooney and Evans or Worthy and Reed and make a 2-for-1 tier up at wide receiver, we definitely look to do so. I want to hold on to Keon Coleman, though, at the bottom end. And I want to hold on to Waddle. I think that they will possibly see a boom in value in comparison to where they're at right now. Okay. Now, going over to tight ends, we are sitting with Travis Kelce, Dalton Schultz. Obviously, we have to play Schultz here when Kelce misses this week with the bye. But immediately afterwards, you are cutting Dalton Schultz. You're picking up your favorite running back. Bucky Irving will have already be rostered at that point. I think you're picking up either Ty Chandler or Tyler Algier. Wide receiver, you would look at Juju Smith-Schuster. So I think the main moves you want to be making on this team is a 2-for-1 tier up at wide receiver. Cutting whatever the bottom running back on your roster is for Bucky Irving. And then after the week goes by, cutting Dalton Schultz and picking up your favorite wide receiver or running back at that point. But I really do appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way here, my friend. But let's move this over to our next team. This coming out from Jose Kevin. Much love, says, hey, Mason, hope all is well. Was wanting to curb stomp my 2 roommates, Habibi and Free Tuggies LLC this year. I should have Puka coming back very soon, which I'm hyped about. Just wanted to see if you see any moves you would suggest or I make if we should keep the team as is. Thank you. Thank you. Going to be excited to look at it. Now, I will say this is an 8-team format, so there should be solid options on the waiver wire. But with that being said as well, even though this is an 8-team league, you do start 9 guys. You start 10 players weekly. So a total of 8 wide receivers / running backs. So it's not like we can say that the depth is completely irrelevant. The depth still does matter somewhat. Now it is a 2 quarterback format, which if it's a 12-team 2 quarterback league, then in that case, definitely quarterback's going to be at a massive premium because they're going to be very hard to come by. But if you go through and if you look at what you have, say with quarterback in an 8-team league, QBs in an 8-team formats are not going to be nearly as tough to acquire, because if you do the math, everybody should have at least 4 starting QBs available to them. So like you should actually be able to possibly go to the waiver wire. And on the waiver wire right now, you have guys like Tua, Justin Herbert, Matthew Stafford, all available. So to be honest with you, what I would look to do here is I would look to go ahead and I would look to probably cut somebody like Allen Lazard that really does not have any upside to get into this starting lineup and make an impact. And I'd pick up somebody like Tua that we believe could potentially start over either Darnold or Daniel Jones once Tua is back in. I think that would be a high upside play for us to make that's easy off the waiver wire. Going over to running back, well, I know that you've probably seen like a bunch of videos on YouTube of people, including myself, saying like, hey, Tank Bigsby is a must-add running back, blah, 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 blah. Those are more so for 12-team leagues. If you're playing in an 8-team league, you're probably better off, to be honest with you, looking at one of these other RBs, whether that's Dobbins, Nick Chubb, Bucky Irving. I would cut Tank Bigsby and pick up J.K. Dobbins here relatively easily. And dependent on what your perception of was when Nick Chubb's going to come back, I would consider moving on from Rico Dowdle and picking up Nick Chubb. The reason I probably wouldn't do it, the reason being is obviously Kyron's on bye, Achan's on bye, James Cook's hurt, Jonathan Brooks is hurt. So all these guys are injured or not playing this week. So yeah, cut Bigsby, pick up either J.K. Dobbins or Bucky Irving. If you're really just looking for a play this week with no Rashad White in his offense, Bucky Irving should be a better option than Tank Bigsby. Now, going over to what we have with wide receiver, we have Amon-Ra St. Brown, Chris Godwin, Jaden Reed, Puka Nacua, Jalen Waddle, Dontavian Wicks, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Allen Lazard. Similar story here. While like maybe in the 12-team format, like videos where you see somebody saying on the waiver wire, hey, we want to pick up Wicks, or hey, pick up Wan'Dale Robinson. To be honest, that doesn't really apply to you here. I think I would rather look at the long-term high upside rookie receivers in Rome Odunze and Ladd McConkey. So I would probably rather pivot over to Rome and Ladd if possible for you. And then going over to what we have at tight ends, we are sitting with Sam Laporta and Tucker Kraft, both of whom look like top 10 tight ends rest of season, or even top 8 tight ends. So we have multiple tight end ones here. So there's not too much to discuss. Main thing is, of course, one, we have those very easy waiver wire moves to make. Drop Tank Bigsby. Actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to drop Rico Dowdle, pick up J.K. Dobbins, and I'll drop Tank Bigsby and pick up Bucky Irving. So we have viable running backs we can play this week. And then obviously reconsider picking up Rico Dowdle and dropping either Bucky Irving or J.K. Dobbins after the week. And then also we can consider Nick Chubb. I would drop Allen Lazard and I'd be picking up another quarterback here. I'd be picking up Tua for the long-term upside to potentially play over Darnold or Daniel Jones in the Superflex spot once we get Tua back in. Wide receiver, I'd be dropping Dontavian Wicks and Wan'Dale Robinson. We don't really need them anyway in the short term. I would look for the long-term upside plays of Rome Odunze and Ladd McConkey. If instead you want to say, well, Mason, no Malik Neighbors this week, a league with a bunch of flex spots, I actually need to play Wan'Dale, then in that case, yes, you can hold on to Wan'Dale Robinson and maybe drop him after this week for someone like Rome Odunze when you will get back in Malik Neighbors. And then obviously 2-for-1 trades are extremely advantageous here just because you have phenomenal options on the waiver wire. So when you have great options on waivers, I would love to go through and I would love to make that pivot if possible, but I mean, make that 2-for-1 upgrade if possible, but much easier said than done in an 8-team league. But overall, it's a team with a ton of value. But yeah, I mean, if you can go through and like trade like Jonathan Brooks and Sam Darnold to get a quarterback upgrade, or James Cook, Daniel Jones get a quarterback upgrade, I think that could be very appealing as well. But I think that's all I got for you. Again, thank you so much for being a member of the flock and supporting the channel, and really hope I was able to help you out in some way here. But let's move this over to our next team review. This is another one of those free Underdog team reviews. This is a sleeper team. You can link sleeper through the site, my friend. So I would definitely, if you haven't done so already, and obviously I'm talking to Sleep21 here, but this applies to everybody watching this as well. Go over to flockfantasy.com, and Sleep21's already over there. But go to the My Teams page, and you can link your team here. Just go to League, hit Add New, and then Sleeper, ESPN, Yahoo, whatever you are wanting, you can go ahead and add it. Whatever you play on. But yeah, Sleeper, all you have to do is copy and paste your league ID and then your league links. And you can go ahead and you can play around with these tools, my guy. And next time, if you were to submit another team to me, you don't have to submit a screenshot. And instead, you can actually, I can see your entire league. But saying I'm thinking about consolidating some of my wide receivers, but unsure who to target and what would the cost be. This is by far the deepest team I've ever had, and I feel like we have a real shot at the championship if we can tier up with our wide receiver depth. Okay, so this is we are operating with very limited information here. We only have the starting lineup with one screenshot. So I'm going to try my best to talk about every player in this screenshot. But in terms of consolidating and getting an upgrade, I don't know how it's possible. Right now, we have two top 3 running backs in fantasy football. We have Saquon Barkley and Alvin Kamara. Realistically speaking, what upgrade could even exist? What running back could you possibly look at here? Going over to wide receiver, Marvin Harrison's a wide receiver 1. Garrett Wilson's a wide receiver 1. Marvin Harrison is a low-end wide receiver 1 in the long term. Mike Evans is our wide receiver 3. We have an elite tight end with Brock Bowers. So if you were telling me that you have great depth, particularly at running back or wide receiver down there on the bench, the thing that you are needing to do is you are needing to go through and you're needing to not consolidate at any of these positions. But if you have strong depth at the skill positions as well, there's no excuse for us to not have an elite quarterback. I think you go through, I think you take Justin Fields, if you have Terry McLaurin down on the bench, package him with Terry McLaurin, go see if we can pivot to Lamar, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, Josh Allen. But yeah, really the only spot that you could consolidate and upgrade there is by selling wide receiver depth for a QB upgrade, which I would love if possible, my friend. But let's go through and let's rip through a bunch of trade and start sit questions. This first one going to be coming out from Feta Cheese. This is Ladd McConkey, Isaiah Pacheco, Garrett Wilson versus Justin Jefferson, Tajee Spears, and Jalen Waddle. So Garrett Wilson to Justin Jefferson, upgrade. Ladd McConkey to Jalen Waddle, upgrade. We're paying Isaiah Pacheco to get it done. And we don't even know if Pacheco will come back this year. And if he does, when will it be? This is so easily the Justin Jefferson side and not even remotely close, my friend. Absolutely love it. Now, Peter coming out with our next start set. Here, tight end, we are rolling out Ertz. He had 8 targets last week, but super inefficient. I would be interested to see if we have a waiver wire option. Really, flex is going to be what we are looking at. We're going between Kirk, Ridley, and Spears. What's very interesting is if you look at sportsbooks right now, they're actually putting the Tennessee Titans in a respectable range, saying the Titans are going to be a good offense this week. Don't ask me why, don't ask me how, but they're doing it. Now, in terms of what we had with Christian Kirk, though, even though it's a tough matchup against the Bears, you've had the consistent volume that just simply has not been there for Calvin Ridley. So I will go Kirk, but obviously this Tennessee coaching staff has also referenced that they want to get Ridley more looks. Now, Drew 2 Huncho coming out with a question says, who are we starting at wide receiver 2 in a flex? And who should we trade away Nico Collins for or wait for him? I'm 4-1. If you're 4-1, Nico Collins is going to have more value for you than anybody else in your league. So if you're 4-1, you're thinking about the fantasy football playoffs, Nico Collins will be a great option in the playoffs. So you're going to be holding on to Nico Collins. Wide receiver 2. Oh, this is tough. We're going to go Pickens over Olave with no Derek Carr. And then for the flex, I would really hope that we have a running back here, but we don't. Our running back would be Roshan, Algier, or Braylon Allen. So we probably have to play Chris Olave. Not excited about it. Ladd McConkey, super tough matchup going up against the Denver Broncos, who have a phenomenal defense here. Obviously, Olave, don't want to play him coming off a horrible week, and now you have no Derek Carr, but it is what it is. We had the Nico Collins injury. Now, going over to our next question. This was coming out from Fatty. It says, in a market for a third quarterback, was offered Jones and Reed for Thomas and a future first. Do I accept or hold firm? So regardless of if this is a 2025 or 2026 future first, we are for sure holding as is. Daniel Jones has been good so far this season in comparison to what you were expecting. But you have no idea what the long-term job security looks like here in New York for Daniel Jones. This guy could be worth nothing this offseason in Dynasty. Brian Thomas could be worth straight up more than Jaden Reed in Dynasty. So getting the first round pick on it's a no-brainer. You want the Brian Thomas and first side. Now, K-Baked coming out. Wide receiver, we have Terry Debo. Tight end, we have McBride. Running back, we're looking between Bucky, Dobbins, Raheem, Braylon Allen, Algier. Really, it's just between Dobbins and Bucky. I mean, even Raheem's on bye. But we are going to go ahead. We are going to take Bucky Irving in this instance. And then for the flex spots, we have Higgins, Jameson. If we were to get anybody else in, it would be Dobbins over Jameson Williams if you wanted to swap anything. But I'm completely fine going Jameson here, knowing how high scoring this environment should be against the Dallas Cowboys and knowing that Dobbins is a really tough matchup against the Broncos. Now, Chris coming out with the trade question. This is Bijan versus Kamara and Jordan Addison. It's a keeper league, but we can't keep Bijan next year. So honestly, it doesn't matter then. It's just a redraft format. I honestly don't think I even need to look at the link team. If you're telling me that we can't keep any of these players next year and we're just keep treating it as if it's a redraft league, and if it's a redraft league, I'd rather have Alvin Kamara straight up over Bijan Robinson, which is crazy. If you would have told me I was going to be saying that back in August, I'd have lied to you. I mean, I would have told you that you were lying to me. Sorry, but yeah, I think you have to go with Kamara over Bijan, sadly. Now, Big James coming out with a trade question says, hey, Mason, thoughts on the deal? Other running backs are Achane, Bucky, Eckler. Wide receivers are Lamb, Devonta, Wandale, and Pittman. So running back, Chuba Hubbard's going to make a massive difference for us in the short term. And at the same time, we probably need Christian Kirk in the flex spot. I guess if you get Jaden Reed, then honestly we have Lamb, Smith, and Reed good to go. So I guess we don't actually need that help at wide receiver. Looking at this, my only issue with it is it would force us to be starting Bucky Irving and Austin Eckler this week. I kind of already, we probably have to do it because Reed's the best player. I just don't love selling Chuba Hubbard on your team in particular, unless you have a great record and we are really just thinking long-term. Because Chuba Hubbard could make a really big difference with your team in particular. Now, Vader coming out with the start sit question says, Antonio Gibson is on the waiver wire. Should we start him or Sermon? So if I'm looking at Gibson versus Sermon, if it is a full PPR format, I don't know. I think Gibson has the receiving usage. The issue is with Sermon, while he had six targets, I think 5 receptions last week. If Anthony Richardson's under center, the checkdown rate's going to be lower. Not only is the checkdown rate going to be lower, but at the same time, you are at risk for getting vultured at the goal line. So I would go with Gibson, honestly, over Trey Sermon. And then obviously we leave the flex as is. So I'm going to leave this empty just to make sure we're on the same page. Go get Gibson. And the player that you probably drop in that instance, I don't know, maybe Sermon. But let's move this over to Gavin. Says, happy weekend, Mason. No Nico or Aaron Jones this week. Thoughts on the running backs and flex? Thanks as always. Thank you, my guy, for always hanging out with us in these live streams. Really do appreciate you. Yeah, Bucky Irving, absolute no-brainer play here with Chuba Hubbard. Really, Travis Etienne's the guy that we would consider for one of the flex spots at running back. Outside of Etienne in consideration this week, you have Amari Cooper and Jamison Williams. So Jamison Williams in a better game environment where you should have a ton of points scored. It has the potential to be the highest scoring game of the week. Probably still go with Travis Etienne. I mean, Etienne is a tough matchup, but he seems to be healthy. Obviously, we're assuming that Etienne is healthy in this instance. And he has the receiving usage as well. So with the receiving usage, I think you do have somewhat a baseline floor. Clearly, Jamison Williams has been much better. But Jamison, the past 2 games he's played, he's had 2 targets in each game. Like, the volume's not there. Now, Z Shane's 20 coming out says 3-2, about to be 4-2. Scared to give up the elite handcuff Moss for Brooks. What are your thoughts? Zach Moss is not an elite handcuff. Zach Moss is a viable RB2 that if Chase Brown were to get injured, he jumps up to be an RB1. Like, Zach Moss has standalone value here. He's not just an elite handcuff for sure. Schultz versus Kincaid and Brooks. So I'm sorry. Schultz versus Kincaid, you get an upgrade there. Moss versus Brooks. It is tough with the news that we had regarding Brooks today. Honestly, I probably need to move Brooks behind Moss in my rest of season rankings. From what we had last week coming out of Carolina, at least maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe I was just hoping, but it sounded like Jonathan Brooks was potentially going to be beginning that prep to come back here in this offense, which doesn't happen. Zach Moss does look healthy now. With Zach Moss being healthy, I'd rather him over Najee. I think Zach Moss RB2 here easily. Like, if you look at before Zach Moss getting injured last week, Zach Moss did have 75% of the snaps in Cincinnati in comparison to Chase Brown at 25%. Now, obviously, that got skewed because you ended up getting Zach Moss injured by the end of the game. Do we have your team here? The other tight end that we have on this squad is none. We don't have another tight end. So 4-2, just thinking long-term upside on a team that has Josh Allen as well. I probably go Brooks and Kincaid, but I think it is very tough because obviously Kincaid has been much worse than we were expecting. A lot of that hinging on Josh Allen not having nearly as much passing volume in this offense as we thought there was going to be. Now, Parrish coming out with a start sit question. It says, Wicks or Slayton? I'm going Dontavian Wicks. Clearly, Darius Slayton was phenomenal last week. He had the volume last week as well. And you have no Malik Neighbors here. If you're looking at Darius Slayton, however, we have such a large sample of games with no Malik Neighbors and with Daniel Jones that Darius Slayton was nothing in fantasy football. You're not expecting the 27-year-old wide receiver to all of a sudden finally break out. All right, then we go Wicks, supposed to be a better offense. Running back, we for sure go Chuba, for sure. Maybe the only interesting thing here is If Christian Watson plays, then you can pivot over to Darius Slayton if you want. But I'm not excited to play Slayton. Now, Redskins coming out with a team review. Really appreciate you. Excited to check this out, saying, in a position to win this year, trying to figure out who is this team to sell and where to upgrade, or a couple different things. So one, this is a dynasty format where if you look at us in the league analyzer, there are 2 juggernaut teams here at the top. We are one of them. So yeah, we are in a position to contend. Both these teams are 4-1 currently. And also we have already sold our 2025 first, and we have sold our 2026 first. So in that instance, we are highly incentivized to go ahead and push the chips in the middle and try to win right this second. Now, it's a 1 quarterback format where we have Jalen Hurts at QB. Obviously, Hurts in Dynasty, we can contend with him in the short term. We can build around him in the long term. No hesitation, regardless. Cornerstone asset, we can definitely contend with this QB room. Going over to running back, Kyron Williams, Kenneth Walker, Josh Jacobs. 2 of these guys will be top-end RB1s. We maybe have another low-end RB1 / high-end RB2 here with Jacobs. Chase Brown, Nick Chubb, Tank Bigsby, quality running back depth. Typically, at running back, we only care about the season that we are in because it's so hard to project these guys out for the long term. But in the case of Kyron Williams and Kenneth Walker, there is that possibility in which you could go through and you could get a usable 2025, 2026 season out of both running backs, which honestly, we kind of want to be looking at a 2-year window here to contend when we've already sold our 2026 first round pick as well. Going over to wide receiver, we have the cornerstone assets at the top with Jefferson and Chase. These are elite pieces that we are able to play every single week, regardless of the matchup, contend with this year, and build around in the long term. So absolutely no hesitation here whatsoever. Going over to what we have with tight ends, we have Evan Ingram. We can hopefully skirt by with Ingram. There is really nothing. What could I possibly do with this team? This is a dynasty team that has almost every position on lock that's set to contend. If you wanted to do something here, and obviously we are stretching to find anything, it is, if you're going all in to contend this year, might as well trade a second rounder and go get a viable tight ends. Like if we can go through and look at some of the teams that are currently pivoting to a rebuild, this team is 1-4. They have Brock Bowers, Frymu, so they don't have a tight end that would be interested to trade for. Obviously, if we could get Bowers, we would, but on a rebuilding team, they want Bowers. There are just a lot of other 2-3 teams. So, I mean, I'm wondering what team has Kelsey. Is it a 2-3 team that's looking to potentially pivot off? No, the Kelsey team's 3-2. The Kelsey team may get better long-term as well, as they have guys like Puka. They don't have their 2025 first. They're probably looking to contend. What can we do? It's a dynasty league where you only start 8 players, so it's not like depth is super important here. But if we're contending, nobody is going to be willing to pay more for like Dontavian Wicks than us. I mean, I guess if you could find a rebuilding roster, let's go back over to that 1-4 team. Maybe if you could convince them to give you Terry McLaurin for Dontavian Wicks by sending him a message and going, hey man, Terry McLaurin's 29 years old. Are you sure you don't want to move off of McLaurin, Dontavian Wicks here, this young ascending wide receiver in year 2? I think that would be the main thing that you couldn't do with this, but I'm grasping at straws. You have a phenomenal team. Looking at the league analyzer, we are at the very top here alongside this other one. We have the cornerstone pieces where we need them. Tight end's a little bit questionable, but I think we wait to see what we have from Evan Ingram. And then honestly, we have the depth. We have the flexibility with the 2025 second, 2025 third, where if we needed to trade for a tight end to go send a second rounder for Kelsey, then we can do it at that point. But might as well see what we have from Evan Ingram first. And it doesn't appear that there are a bunch of rebuilding teams that are looking to offload tight ends. So I wish I had more for you. I wish there was something I could do. But the reality is, I think you have a great team. I think you're set up perfectly. Now let's move this over for a gold. It says 4-1 first place. I don't have to start Drake May. It's super flex, but injuries have me low on options. So there are 3 flex spots. So this is I'm assuming this is a super flex dynasty league with how deep this is. So yeah, we have no Jalen Waddle for this week. Oh dear God. T. Higgins obviously must start player out of this list. This is ugly. Outside of that, no Rashad White, no Ramondre Stevenson. Yeah, you're for sure playing Drake May in the super flex. That's without a thought. Rashad Bateman's banged up. No Nico Collins. No Adam Thielen. You know what we do? Trey Tucker was like a must bench guy for us last week. Tough to play him, but you got to. Like, realistically speaking, who else? I think Justice Hill may be our third flex. Yeah, no lie. I think Justice Hill's our third flex. And we hope that they possibly get into a shootout with Washington. And all of a sudden, we get a considerable amount of targets going the direction of Justice Hill. If it's not Justice Hill, it's probably Tyler Algier. Obviously, it's a great matchup for Tyler Algier. And you know what? We probably go Algier over Justice Hill, primarily because if you look at the spread on that Washington game, right now, the Ravens are favored by about 6 points. So they're probably not going to be in a position in which they have to run the ball consistently. I'm sorry, they have to drop back consistently. Instead, they're going to run the ball. But yeah, tough spot. Please play Drake May in the Superflex for sure. Now, going over to Tex Raid says, pick one full PBR for the flex. All of these are either available or on my team. Couldn't find Slayton or Turpin. Thank you for letting me know. I am not going to be playing Slayton, though. I will go with Ridley over him still. And at running back, we are going to go ahead between Rico Dowdle and Antonio Gibson. We just updated our rankings for week 6 here. We do have them relatively close together. Where Rico Dowdle, we have at RB21, Gibson, RB27. You do have the receiving usage from Gibson. Rico Dowdle should just be in a much better offense, even if it's a tough matchup going up against Detroit. Right now, the New England Patriots project to score about 15.25 points here. So, I mean, obviously, Ray Davis is a play that we can look at as well. But my issue with Ray Davis is I think there's a shot that he does split with Ty Johnson. So, not going to be super excited to go in that direction either. So, I think we just play Rico Dowdle. Now, going over to Bin Dog with the trade question. This is Aaron Jones, Devonta Smith for Waddle, a third, and Zamir White. So the third and Zamir White doesn't matter at all. It's a keeper league, but don't think we can win this year. My other receiver to keep is Dell or Rome. Well, even in a keeper league, Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle are very similar. Actually, whenever I see third rounder, I'm assuming that that's a third round rookie pick in Dynasty. If you're telling me, no, Mason, this isn't a Dynasty league. This is a keeper league where everybody only keeps 2 players. So that third round pick is more so like a 5th round pick in our redraft league next year. In that context, then it's very different if you're telling me you're waving the white flag and you're not going to be able to look to contend this season. Ben Dog, can you please let me know, are you in the live chat right now? I would love to ask you some more questions about this if possible. But yeah, please let me know, Ben Dog, if you're in the chat, because I think that there are some interesting things here. Okay. Okay, perfect. I see you out here. How many keepers? And how many keepers are kept from a year-to-year perspective? And can you confirm that this is like a 3rd round pick in next year's like main draft, not a rookie draft? Because if you're telling me like, hey, only 2 players are kept, and then it's a It's effectively a, I don't know, a league where you, text rate says, sorry, I missed the flex option on the site. So in that case, who would you start between Pickens and Dowdle? Much thanks. I would go Dowdle there, but it is very, very close, to be honest. Okay. So you're telling me you keep one quarterback, two wide receivers, two running backs, a tight end, a defense, and a kicker. If you keep all these players, I would rather have Aaron Jones and Devonta Smith and still try to win. Because the third round pick's not going to matter. The third round pick is like a 10th round pick then. So I think we go ahead and we go Aaron Jones, Devonta Smith, even in that instance, unless it's like a league where you only have two keepers. But Pain Bliss coming out says Devonta Smith versus Cooper Kupp. Where do you go, Kupp? I mean, everything that I've read sounds like Kupp should be back. I want to say in week 7. And you know what I'm going to do here? I'm actually going to go through. I have Devonta Smith. This is giving me the idea in the Flock League. I think a dev has Cooper Kupp. And honestly, I may be able to swing this deal. I'm going to send this in the dev chat message and see if I can get this done. I would definitely rather have Cooper Kupp here. Okay, but let's move this over. Yeah, but give me Cooper Kupp. Give me Kupp. And sorry, we had to go through and send out a little offer in our own league. Looking at this next trade, this is from J16 Mackling says, thinking of having Kyron Achane and Bijan would be OP, but I'm scared to let go of London. You got to make the deal. If you get the ability to pay Kyron Williams, I mean, if you get the ability to go through and add in Kyron, who's already been a top 5 running back, and the Rams potentially are going to be healthier coming out of the bye week, and you're able to pair him up with Achane and Bijan, the long-term upside that you would have with that running back room is just insane. Especially, this is a linked league as well. So with this being a linked league, we can confirm that it's only a 10-team format. So you should be able to pick up another exciting player off the waiver wire here. So let's go ahead and let's take Kyron Williams. Now, Zarbud's coming out with a team review. This is Inglorious Bastards. This is a 2-quarterback redraft league. So I'm sorry, honestly, ignore the league analyzer. The league analyzer is treating the values if it's a 1-quarterback format. So just throw that in the garbage. I'm sitting at 3-2. So should we be making some trades? Also, who should we start at running back in the flex spots? Thank you so much. You helped me win this league last year. Much love, my friend. Gonna be excited to check this out. I'm assuming that it is a 2-quarterback format. And yes, it definitely is. This is actually tagged as if it's a redraft league. Zabuds, are you in the live chat right now? Can you let me know, is this a redraft format? Because you actually have a considerable amount of roster spots here for this to be a redraft league. But please let me know in the live chat, is this, if you're here. But anyway, quarterback, it's a super flex format where we have Hurts, Baker, Bo Nix. So Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield both look like they can be QB1s. One's a low-end QB1. The other's a high-end QB1. Both obviously are must-start names every single week. And then we have Bo Nix to play during the bye. So, I mean, perfectly fine quarterback room. We can definitely contend with this QB room. Going over to running back, running back's going to probably be the issue that you have in the long term here. Short term, we're crushing. Chuba Hubbard, Bucky Irving are both going to crush this week. DeAndre Swift is probably going to crush this week as well. Long term, if Rachaad White's fully healthy, Jonathan Brooks is fully healthy, and we see these running backs go back to being in running back by committees, and then all of a sudden, our starting running backs are DeAndre Swift and Chase Brown. Not nearly as exciting. I'll say the starting running backs we're rolling with this week. We're going to be going with Chuba Hubbard and at your call between DeAndre Swift, Bucky Irving. Wide receiver in the flexes, we're going to go Amon-Ra St. Brown, Drake London, T. Higgins, and then we're going to go throw the other running back in the other flex. So play Swift, Chuba, Bucky, running back, and the flex spot. And then wide receiver, St. Brown, London. And then for the other flex, T. Higgins. And then, yeah, my main issue that you have with this team is, while I understand that we are sitting here with the injury to Puka Nacua, you are still so damn strong here at the very top that these borderline plays that don't have, like, the upside to turn into season-long league winners, like Xavier Hutchinson, Darius Slayton, Jordan Whittington, I don't want to be wasting roster spots on these players. Like, Cooper Kupp goes down. What does Jordan Whittington turn into? A wide receiver 4 that you're kind of considering maybe. Malik Neighbors goes down. Darius Slayton turns into a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 that you're kind of considering maybe. So, and especially once these guys come back in, same thing Nico Collins and Xavier Hutchinson. Like, there's no reason to roster these 3 players here. Whereas we can go over and look at maybe the running back position as an example. Running back here, we have Roschon, Jalen Warren, Jalen Wright, Trey Benson. DeAndre Swift goes down. Roschon's maybe a must-start running back. Najee goes down. Jalen Warren may be a must-start running back. Like, there is a path for these running backs to actually be a massive difference-making players. So I would go ahead. I would cut Whittington. I would cut Slayton. I would cut Hutchinson. I would pick up probably Roschon, Jalen Warren. And then your call between Wright, Benson, Ray Davis. Obviously, we get the news with the James Cook injury that makes it look like Ray Davis may be that interesting pickup there, especially when we're stronger at the top end at wide receiver than we are at running back, right? We're so strong with the top end wide receiver production that we have. Sadir says, why cut Slayton this week? Is this team starting Slayton this week? Would you start Darius Slayton over T. Higgins? Would you start Darius Slayton over Chuba Hubbard? No, this team's not starting Darius Slayton under any circumstance. So it doesn't matter that Malik Neighbors not playing this week. Darius Slayton has 0 value for this team. And that's not going to change in week 7, where if they go through and they pick up Jalen Warren, and then Najee Harris goes down with a high ankle sprain in week 6, there's a good shot that Jalen Warren skyrockets up rankings, where that's not going to happen. Even if Darius Slayton drops 30 points this week, and then Malik Neighbors is back next week, do you just cut Darius Slayton then? He's Juwan Jennings, best case. So yeah, cut Whittington, cut Slayton, cut Hutchinson, pick up the 3 running backs. Tight end, we have Kraft, who looks like a top 10 tight end rest of the season. I think it's a great team. I don't think you need to be making any trades. But really, the only thing that we do here is adjust what you have down with the bottom end of this roster with the spots that we are allocating to wide receiver. But outside of that, love the team, especially with the quarterback position. And like I said, don't listen to League Analyzer here. The League Analyzer is treating this as if it's a 1 quarterback format. So obviously this team has a lot more value when we're sitting here with Hurts and Baker and Superflex. But yeah, drop the wide receivers, pick up running back upside. I don't even think you need to make any trades there, to be honest. But let's move this over to our next start sit. This one coming out from Johnson. or Joneson, 18. I'm sorry, I can't read. I'm an idiot. But this is Shaheed, DJ Moore, George Pickens, Trey McBride, Kenneth Walker, Trey Sermon. And then running back in the third slot, we have to start 3 running backs, which is interesting. Here, we're going to go Ray Davis, even if Jalen Warren plays, coming off his injury in a bad offense with Najee Harris healthy. Can't be excited about him. No Ramondre, no Jonathan Taylor. Charbonnet already played. So really, it's just Ray Davis, Jalen Warren, or Ty Johnson. We got Ray Davis. And then in the second flex spot here, probably going to be looking at wide receiver. If Pittman plays, actually, no, we're not going to go Pittman under any circumstance because it looks like you should have Anthony Richardson good to go. So we'll take Jalen Tolbert this week in a really good matchup against the Lions with no Brandon Cooks. Now, Tom is coming out with a start-sit question. Here, wide receiver 2, we have Godwin, kind of as that must-start name. You have a couple of very interesting plays in DJ Moore, Deontay Johnson as well, and Jaden Reed. Dear God. If you look at my rankings this week, I probably have Reed as the guy we're going with. It's going to be a great matchup going up against the Arizona Cardinals. Project that to be a top 3 offense in total points scored. Going over to the flex, we even have David Montgomery here. Dear God. If it is a full PPR formats, I think we stick at wide receiver. I think we go ahead and play Chris Godwin. If you look at the historical splits for Godwin and Evans going up against the New Orleans Saints, what we have seen over the past 4 or so years is you've actually had the expanded target share for Godwin where Evans does take a step backwards. So we're going to go ahead and we will take Chris Godwin. Now, AK Jinx coming out with a trade question. This is Brees for Darnell and Jacobs. This is Brees by a mile. Easily. This isn't a league that's linked, so I can't see your exact league settings. If this is a 16-team league or it's a 14-team league with multiple flex spots where Darnell Mooney is just an absolute must-start player every single week, that's going to make a massive difference in your lineup, then at that point, maybe we consider the Mooney and Jacobs side. But no, I think you have to go ahead. I think you have to take Brees. Okay. Now let's move this over and answer some of the questions that we have in the chat. Please, if you have any questions, go ahead, drop them in the chat. We'll be happy to answer as many as we possibly can. Soul King Mikey says, Josh Allen or Jordan Love this week. If you are looking at sports books, they are currently projecting out significantly more points scored in Green Bay than Buffalo. However, with that being said, if it is a 4-point passing touchdown formats, there, I think you probably... you probably take Josh Allen. Obviously not as excited about it as we were at the beginning of the year. Justin says Travis Etienne and Kareem Hunt for Kenneth Walker. I think you probably have to go with Kenneth Walker here. I mean, Kenneth Walker has proven at this point to really be matchup proof in a way, where it doesn't matter if you're going to get the game with a complete blowout where the Seattle Seahawks are having to drop back to pass 60 plus times. In that instance, you're going to have all the usage as a receiver that you'd want. Whereas, I don't know. In a game where they're winning, we could possibly see 20 plus rushing attempts for Walker. He has the size. So then you go Walker. Zen Family says Brian Thomas or Deontay Johnson this week. I would go Deontay Johnson over Brian Thomas. If you're looking at sports books, they're actually saying that the Panthers are going to be outscoring the Jags offense this week or being very comparable. Deontay Johnson has had more target volume than you've seen from Brian Thomas over the large sample. You have a tough matchup for Thomas in a London game. I don't know. I'm excited about Brian Thomas long term. This week, I think it may be a little bit tougher. Ritvik says Olave or Amari. So he has not had the same target volume as Amari so far this season, but I would still put Olave ahead of Amari rest of season because of the garbage quarterback play that Amari Cooper has. But Olave may also have garbage quarterback play this week. So this week, I'm going to go with Amari because Amari has been averaging 10 targets a game, which Olave hasn't come close to, and I think both have bad quarterbacks. Lou says J.K. Dobbins for Jordan Addison. Really depends on your team and your league format. If it's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league where the wide receiver depth's going to make it where you probably never start Addison in a format like that, you probably just go Dobbins. Now, let's go over and look at our next question. This one's coming out from LaBoss says Wan'Dale Robinson or Mike Evans. So obviously, Wan'Dale Robinson, great matchup going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. Not only do you have a great matchup going up against the Bengals, but at the same time, should have a very safe target share. Looking at the situation where Malik Neighbors is out, and we've seen Wan'Dale averaging over 10 targets a game over the past 2 weeks. Now, with that being said, I am not mentally tough enough. I am not mentally strong enough to ever go through and bench Mike Evans for Wan'Dale Robinson. Not a healthy Mike Evans with a healthy Baker Mayfield. So to be honest with you, if it was my own team, I would go through, I would take Evans. But I don't know if that's what you should do. Dustin says, do we know if Flacco's starting this week? The last thing that I read is it sounds like they are training to have AR good to go. Sounds like Anthony Richardson will be the guy. Okay. Now let's move this over to our next question here. And actually, of course, if you ever wanted to ask a question, you can always do so on flockfantasy.com. You can find the link in the live chat. Or if you just go over to flockfantasy.com, now you can check out all the free tools and stuff we have over there as well. Definitely recommend checking out the My Teams tool at the very least. If you play on ESPN, if you play on Yahoo, if you play on Sleeper, you can go through and you can actually link your fantasy football league for completely free. And for completely free, see updated power rankings of the teams that are in your league. But if you go to the top right corner to this expert advice button, you can actually get a team review, trade question, or a start sit question. Now, of course, if you wanted a team review, I would recommend actually taking advantage of the promo that we have with Underdog Fantasy. Would be a much cheaper way to get that team review. Where if you go to the link in the live chat that says free Joe Burrow pick, you'll get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, on top of that, you're going to be getting a free Joe Burrow pick, more than less than half a total yard for the Sunday game, and a free team review in the live streams that we're doing every single night. Just make sure that you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog Fantasy. That way I know who to credit with that free team review voucher. But let's go ahead and let's pull up our next few questions here. And we do not have too many more questions to go through. So if you get your question in, it shouldn't take too long. But Whole Milk says, happy late B-Day, brother. We have Kraft, and the guy who owns Nico is pretty desperate at tight ends. This is a trade that you make 2 weeks from now. This isn't a trade that you make today. This is a trade you make 3 weeks from now when Nico Collins is a little bit closer to returning. With Kelsey, looks like the clear tight end one in fantasy post Rashee Rice injury. The only way that I do this deal is if I'm 5-0. Teams linked. So honestly, a trade that I would rather make is I would rather take like Brian Thomas. Actually, I don't even know if we want to do that. Yeah, it's probably what you would do. I would rather trade like Brian Thomas and Tucker Kraft for Nico Collins than I would Kelsey. Like Kelsey looks like he is just going to be absolutely set up to crush this season. No Rashee Rice. Now going over to our next team review. Thank you, Straw Hat Crew. And this is one of those that you can tell they are coming out here to just absolutely flex on us. Comment is anything I can do to try to improve any further. I don't even have to look at the team. We don't even have to pull it up. We can see the league analyzer where we have almost 10,000 points more than the second best team here. We have 4 times the value of the bottom team in this league. You look at the bottom team in this league. What the hell's going on? So we're 5-0 on top of this. It is going to be extremely difficult for us to make this team any better. We're pulling it up with the expectations that it is goated, and it really is. It is a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format. Quarterback, we have Baker Mayfield as well as Anthony Richardson. Obviously, both these quarterbacks can be really strong options if you wanted to play the matchups between the two. AR has the rushing upside. Baker Mayfield has the consistent passing volume. But I don't know. Because your team is this good, I think you could afford to upgrade. In a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, I would really love to have an elite level quarterback like Daniels, like Hurts, like Lamar. Going over to running back, you have Barkley, Jacobs, Connor. So we have the running back 1 in fantasy already through his bye week. Josh Jacobs can be a running back 1. James Conner can be a running back 1. We have Nick Chubb for long-term upside. Going over to wide receiver, we have Chase, Justin Jefferson. So if we're looking at what we have with this team, we have 3 of the most valuable players in fantasy football with Chase, Jefferson, Barkley. You have Evans, T. Higgins, Rome Odunze, Juju Smith-Schuster as quality wide receiver depth. Going over to tight end, we have Ferguson and Evan Ingram. So obviously Ferguson, a really strong tight end that you are able to play every single week regardless. I don't know what we could possibly do with this team. I think maybe the only thing that we can say is when you are so strong here at the very top with a league that you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. If you wanted to go through and trade T. Higgins and Baker Mayfield or T. Higgins and Anthony Richardson to go out there and overpay for an elite quarterback and go get somebody like Jalen Hurts? I mean, it would be an absolute no-brainer. Going through and looking for a team that maybe has a top-end quarterback for us that needs help at wide receiver. This team has Daniels and Kyler. And looking at what they have at receiver, their wide receiver 2s, Tank Dell, wide receiver 3s, Ladd McConkey. I think you approach this team and you try to send them Baker Mayfield and T. Higgins for Jaden Daniels, there's a shot that it gets accepted. And obviously it sucks losing T. Higgins, but then at that point we can just easily backfill and pick up Josh Downs off the waiver wire for free. Going through and looking for another team that maybe needs some help at wide receiver. This team has T. Higgins as their wide receiver 3. They have the James Cook injury. Maybe they have Jordan Addison. I'm sorry. Maybe they want T. Higgins as their wide receiver 3. So, I mean, I wouldn't discriminate. Even if this team's 5-0, I'd send them an offer. Say, hey, you want Higgins and Baker for Lamar? Who has Josh Allen, and could they possibly use a wide receiver? I'm sorry, not Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. This team has Jalen Hurts. They have Kupp injured. They have Waddle on bye. They're starting Shaheed this week. Let's go off for this team, Baker Mayfield and T. Higgins for Jalen Hurts. So I don't think there are many things for us to do here. Outside of going through getting the elite level quarterback, we already have an obnoxiously strong team with Barkley, Chase, Jefferson, in a league where you're going to start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. You can afford an elite level quarterback here. Now going over to Vex Dots. Here we need to start a wide receiver. We are looking at Hopkins, Leggett, no Nico, no Tyreek. Guess maybe point out Trey Tucker. I would go with Leggett. We actually get the positive news, which I wasn't expecting, that Leggett's completely off the injury report, where it sounds like he is 100% good to go. Going over to what we have with the flex spot. We would go Travis Etienne for sure over DeAndre Hopkins. Is there another interesting running back we can look at? No, there's not. So yeah, I would play Etienne and Leggett over Hopkins. If you look at Hopkins this past week, I mean, before the bye, that is, the snaps were, I believe, down to like 37%. Obviously a very unique game environment there, where I don't know if we can be taking too much away from it. And after the bye as well, it's an interesting spot in that Hopkins could expand his role if he is a little bit healthier. But I'd still rather have ETN despite the low-scoring offense and the shrinking role. Now, Michael Paz, always happy to see you with the trade question. This is Waddle for Brian Robinson. Love watching the streams in the background while chilling with my daughter. She's 2 weeks old today. That is awesome. Congrats, my friend. I am jealous. I wish I had a little kid, but it is what it is. It is what it is. I have fantasy football live streams instead, but happy for you. And looking at this, Waddle versus Brian Robinson. Looking at the team here, running back currently, we have Joe Mixon, Zach Charbonnet, Zach Moss. Wide receiver, we are sitting with Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, Rome Odunze, Chris Godwin. So you're so freaking loaded at wide receiver. Then yeah, I would go ahead. I would take Brian Robinson, but much love. Really do appreciate you, my friend, of course. But let's move this over to G-Sot with the trade question. Says 2-man keeper league. He offered Hunt and a second next year for Charbonnet and a 5th. Hunt in the 2nd. Are you kidding me? I'd rather have Kareem Hunt over Charbonnet. So if you're going to get a pickup grade as well, then it's just an absolute no-brainer. I don't think it's like a guarantee that, every single week going into the future, we're going to get 20-plus touches for Kareem Hunt in a Kansas City Chiefs offense. I don't think it's a guarantee by any means, but it's a possibility. So, I mean, I'm willing to roll with that possibility, especially if we're the one getting the pickup grade as well. Okay. Now, let's move this over to our next question. It's going to be a team review from Rafty. This is one of those free Underdog team reviews here. It says, quarterback available as free agents are Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson, Bo Nix, Trevor Lawrence, Watson, and Sam Darnold. need to pick one up for next week, we're definitely picking up Anthony Richardson. Jones plays Philadelphia and Richardson plays Miami. We are going to be going with AR for sure. I think that he actually has the upside to potentially pop and be worth a little bit more than he is now. And we're down here at the 8th spot with the league analyzer. So definitely a spot in which we need to try our best to improve. You don't like to see it at all. And we have Caleb Williams. I may play freaking Anthony Richardson over Caleb Williams right now. Like, to be honest with you. You don't have a clear player that you can go through and drop. However, okay, there's a lot that we can talk about with this team. This is a 2-3 team where the Nico Collins injury absolutely kills us. Now this week, we're starting James Conner, Zach Moss, Marvin Harrison, Zay Flowers, and then Darnell Mooney in the flex in a 10-team format. Not a great situation. And obviously, quarterback, we are just streaming right now with Caleb Williams. And yeah, going through and looking at some of the best quarterbacks you have, I would probably cut Caleb and not play Anthony Richardson if he's good to go. Juan says, my side says I'm 6th on the league analyzer. That's probably because you're looking at the average expert values. I'm looking at my rankings. So like if you link your team with the league analyzer over there on the site with the My Teams page, you can go through and you can select the source of the rankings that you want to be looking at. So the expert is the average of all the creators, including myself. But you can go ahead and you can just select my own if you're interested in those. And then in that instance, it goes through and it updates the order because obviously different people have different rankings and different values for different players. I don't know if we said different enough times. But regardless, yeah, looking at this, I think that one thing to improve the team is cutting Caleb, picking up Anthony Richardson, where AR just has more rushing upside right now. Looking at running back on the waiver wire, you have Jonathan Brooks, Chase Brown, Braylon Allen. I may consider dropping Rachaad White for Chase Brown. I mean, it's not an easy spot for sure. But, I mean, another thing that is really, really interesting is if we could go through and if we can sell one of the tight ends, and this is what we may have to do, to be honest. I think we may end up having to sell George Kittle. It sucks. Kittle looks great. Kittle, you can make an argument that he is the tight end 1 in fantasy football. But on a roster like this, where we do have an overall void of value, I think if you can send Kittle and Zach Moss and get a serious running back upgrade from a team that really needs a tight ends, like going over, we're not going to be able to. This team has Tyler Conklin. They need George Kittle. But I mean, I guess if you could send Kittle and like Nico Collins and get to Jamar Chase, obviously we would. Much easier said than done. This team has Tucker Kraft at tight ends. If we could send them Kittle and Zach Moss to get to Kenneth Walker or Jahmyr Gibbs, I would absolutely love it. This team has Cole Kmet, Colby Parkinson at tight end. If you could send them Kittle and Zach Moss, or it doesn't even need to be Zach Moss, Rachaad White, either one of these running backs, or Isaiah Pacheco. Kittle and Pacheco, or Kittle and Moss, or Kittle and White, and get to either Kyron or Bijan, I would absolutely love it. This squad is Evan Ingram as well as Cade Otton. If we can send them Kittle in one of those running backs to get to Breece Hall, I would love it. Because then you're able to go through and start Ferguson. We have the running back upgrade. There are phenomenal options off the waiver wire as well that we can take advantage of, where you can pick up either Jonathan Brooks or Chase Brown for free. Going over to wide receiver, after this week, I think it could be interesting to see Worthy over Darnell Mooney with your roster. But that's the main thing that I would be looking to do here is it sucks, but you have the luxury of doing it when Ferguson is our backup tight ends. If you can take Kittle, package him with a running back, go get a stud RB, open up a roster spot, and then pick up your favorite waiver wire option, which would probably be somebody like either Xavier Worthy, Chase Brown, or maybe Jonathan Brooks. I think you go ahead and you make that play. And the guy that I actually really like to sell is, I would really be interested in going through and selling Isaiah Pacheco, because now that you have Nico Collins on the IR and there are this many flex spots, there are this many solid waiver wire options, I would want to give ourselves the open bench spot so we can make some more plays with the waiver wire. I think that would be very interesting, but I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much for being a member of the flock. I really do hope I was able to help you out in some way. Now let's move this over to Van Gliders. Say start sits is down JT and more likely than not Cook. I need advice for my wide receiver 2 in a flex. Thank you. Thank you. Here, Higgins, Wandale, Mooney, Brian Thomas. We are going to go with T. Higgins with Brian Thomas having a really tough matchup against the Bears. And then for the flex, I'm still going to go Brian Thomas over Wandale Robinson. It's extremely close for us. I think you can make an argument for either or. I definitely don't play Darnell Mooney here. The argument that you would have for Wandale Robinson is obviously no neighbors, better matchup, consistent target volume. The argument that you'd have with Brian Thomas is a big play upside and a more talented receiver overall. We can see what their underdog picks are right now. Let's look up Jaguars. Brian Thomas is currently higher, lower, 57.5 total yards. Whereas Wandale's higher, lower, 56.5 total yards. But full BBR format, you'd assume that Wandale Robinson has more receptions. Now, Motherflocka coming out with a start set. Says 1-4, we need some help. Dear God. I would for sure sell Puka Brooks discounted to help us make the playoffs here. Obviously, if we're 1-4, we need to do anything we can to win this week. We're going to go Zay Flowers against Washington. Hopefully it's a game with passing volume for Lamar. Running back, we're going to go DeAndre Swift going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars in a good matchup where the Bears are heavily favored. And then for the flex spot here, I think we are going to go with Zach Moss now that he is going to go in a great matchup against the Giants. Now moving this over to I'm a Flocker. Says Trey Sermon also wasn't able to add. Thank you for letting me know. Between Bucky, Dobbins, Chase Brown, and Antonio Gibson, a lot of these running backs are interesting, and obviously throw Trey Sermon in here. But I think you do go Bucky Irving. The upside that you get with Bucky is not just limited to him taking the first and second down looks with the Rachaad White injury, but also we actually saw him in college be a great passing down running back as well. Now, McCon coming out with the start sits. His original team name is Nick's Gay. Well, thank you for updating, my friend, but thank you for letting me know what the original team name was. And any advice for the team overall? Find my start sit this week a bit hard. Looking at this, Jalen Tolbert is in a great matchup. Obviously, we have no Malik Neighbors. Not interested in Slayton, though, in comparison to these other guys. I think it really comes down between Dell, Tolbert. Just to be fully transparent with you, the main reason I am pivoting over to Dell is looking at what you have with like the underdog picks this week. Tank Dell's literally higher, lower, 62.5 receiving yards. I'm sorry, total yards. Whereas Tolbert is higher, lower, 45.5 yards. So obviously the recency bias side of me wants to go, oh my gosh, Jalen Tolbert was phenomenal. And it's a great matchup. And you have no Brandon Cooks still. Let's go Tolbert. But I mean, Dell is in a good offense with a great quarterback and the Nico Collins injury. And then for the second flex spot between Tolbert and Jamison Williams, it is very close and it's up to you. Obviously, it's a high scoring environment in general. I probably go Jamison where we have a little bit of a larger sample. And then for the flex between Sermon, Tolbert, really these are going to be the guys that we are looking at this week. I think we probably go Sermon knowing that he's completely off the injury report and we have the guaranteed volume. I'm less excited about it though because you have Anthony Richardson in. Okay. Now, Ryrod coming out with a start set question. Wide receiver 2, we have Jameson, Amari, Higgins, and Waddle. We're going to go Higgins in what projects out to be one of the best passing offenses in the NFL rest of season and this week. Going over to running back, Bucky Irving's going to be a must-start guy with no Rashad White. And then down in the flex between Dowdle, Jameson, Amari. Amari gives you the consistent volume. No Hunt, no Collins, no Pacheco, no Chubb, no Waddle this week. I think we will just go ahead. We will take Rico Dowdle. The hesitation that you have here is obviously the Detroit Lions have a phenomenal rushing attack. But you did see a career high in pretty much all major fantasy statistics last week for Dowdle. And Zeke's been completely removed from this offense. Now, Crash Esh says, I'm not sure what to do in the future and start sit for this week. So here it is a really tough spot. This may be a team you have to consider selling Nico Collins because, behind Christian Kirk, Alec Pierce, Ray McLeod, Alan Lazard are best options. Please go. I don't see how many teams are in your league here, but please go to the My Teams page on the site. This is completely free for you. Link your team and go and just look at really any team, and you can see the best waiver wire options sorted by the rankings. It's a lot easier to look at the waiver wire this way than it is with whatever the sleeper projections or ESPN projections or the Yahoo projections are showing you, because I would be almost positive that there are better options on your waiver wire than what we are sitting here with Ray McLeod, Alan Lazard, and Alec Pierce as the bottom 3 guys. Austin says, I linked it. For me, the best option is Tolbert. For sure, please drop Ray McLeod and pick up Jalen Tolbert. Yeah, and let me know what your other best options are too. And then down there for the flex, I think we have no Rashad White this week. Yeah, for the flex, please go pick up Tolbert, drop Ray McLeod, and play Tolbert there in the flex spot. So I'm going to leave this empty because I want you to go pick up Jalen Tolbert and play him. But yeah, please, I think you have some really garbage options down here at the very bottom end of your team in particular. So please just run by the My Teams page and double check, and I'd probably churn some of those bottom players off. But let's move this over to our trade question from Jeremy. It says, picked up Juju, so wanted to move Worthy. I don't think picking up Juju has any impact on that, to be honest. We have Reed and Kraft, so wanted to move off Wicks. I don't think that has... You don't need to be worried about having multiple options in good offenses. To be honest with you, I think you're overthinking it in that instance. I will go to Vontae Adams because I just would rather have Adams straight up. But it has nothing to do with the fact that we have Juju Smith-Schuster on the team, or nothing to do with us having Tucker Kraft on the team. Now, moving this over for Norton Salt. This is one of those free Underdog team reviews. Going to be excited to check this out. And of course, if anybody here watching this wants one of those Underdog team reviews, obviously it's 4 teams on ESPN, Sleeper, Yahoo, but the way you get it is with the Underdog promo. You can find that link to Underdog Fantasy in the live chat in the description. If you use promo code FLOCK, you'll get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, with promo code FLOCK as well, you're going to be getting a free Joe Burrow pick, more than less than half a total yard. And you'll be getting a free team review in the live stream that we're doing every single night. Just make sure that you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog Fantasy. That way I know who we need to credit with that free team review voucher. Okay. Now let's move this back over. This is that team review from Silence of the Lamb. I like the team name. I like that we throw the little ESPN scary profile pic on it. It says, been pretty fortunate with injuries, but I'm still sitting at 2-3. Wondering what we can try to get with Kyler and if there are any other moves to make or if I'm just maintaining course. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's look at this. We 100% want to sell either Kyler Murray or Jaden Daniels. Now, obviously, plan A for us is we are going to go through and we are going to sell Kyler Murray, and we are going to sell Dontavian Wicks for the best wide receiver you can possibly get. Now, with that being said, is it a super easy spot? No, it is not. If you were to go through and if you were to try to sell, say, Jaden Daniels instead, well, we probably want to be holding on to Jaden Daniels. You would just be getting significantly more in return. So I definitely think the play is we're going to be selling one of these quarterbacks. We don't need both. But before we get to that, let's definitely look at some of the waiver wire moves we can make. Running back, I'm assuming Miller's on the IR for us. If for whatever reason he's not, then I would drop Condre Miller and either pick up Ty Chandler or Trey Benson. Wide receiver, I'm going to be dropping Cortland Sutton and Jalen Polk and picking up Juju Smith-Schuster and Christian Watson. I just personally think that you have a little more upside with these guys rest of season. And then obviously tight end, we don't need to be doing anything. But going through and looking at some of the teams that need help at quarterback. That team is Baker. They probably think that they're okay. This team has Brock Purdy. It's going to be tough to convince the Purdy team that they need an upgrade at quarterback, with Purdy coming off a monstrous performance, of course. Now, with this being said, if we could try selling them Kyler Murray and somebody like Dontavian Wicks to get to Nico Collins, it would be an absolute no-brainer. Much, much easier said than done, though. Much easier said than done. Going through and looking at maybe this team down here, they have Dak and Goff. If they really wanted Kyler, if we could send them Kyler and like Zay Flowers to pick up Deebo Samuel, I think that could be very interesting. This team has Anthony Richardson and Geno Smith. If we could maybe send them Kyler Murray for Devontae Adams straight up, I think that could be very interesting. Because obviously, I mean, this is a team where at wide receiver, we're elite at the top. We have Lamb, Smith. Beyond that, we don't have much. I mean, yes, we have Zay Flowers. Running back, we have Gibbs, so we have the RB1. We have Jacobs as a potential low-end RB1 here as well. Braylon Allen, Devin Singletary, Condre Miller. So I'm fine with the running back. I think it's a fine team overall. Tight end, Dalton Kincaid, I think should be better going to the future than what he has been. Obviously, he has been garbage. Really, the only move to make is cut Sutton, cut Polk, pick up Juju, pick up Christian Watson. If Miller's not on the IR, we cut Miller and we pick up Ty Chandler or Trey Benson. We trade Kyler with Flowers to get a wide receiver upgrade if we can. And if nobody is interested in Kyler, if we could sell Jaden Daniels for an absolute haul, you can consider it. But obviously, with that being said, Jaden Daniels is one of the best assets in fantasy football at the moment. We have him ranked at 26 overall, our QB3 rest of season. Some people, I think, could have him as high as QB2 rest of season, and I wouldn't bat an eye at it at all. So you would just need a massive premium if you're selling Daniels. But I think you're maybe more likely to get that massive premium selling Daniels than getting really much interest at all in selling Kyler. Now, B Cosme coming out says, I'm 1-4 and panicking at running back. We need some help, please. I would rather have Lamb. I think, especially with the car injury, I just think you're taking unnecessary risk in pivoting to Alvin Kamara. This is a linked team. So right now at running back, we have Brooks, Jacobs. You have Bucky, Irving, and Chuba Hubbard. You have Bucky, Irving, and Chuba Hubbard. You're cooking right now. Obviously, long-term, maybe it's a little bit of a different spot, but right now you're cooking. I don't think you worry. I think that you're going to be chilling as is. Trying to think if there's really anything to point out here. No, If you're worried about running back in the long term, you're just going to be making waiver wire moves, but you have more than enough production to get by in the short term. I went the high floor and ceiling combo of Lamb over Kamara. Now, Mig Ologic sends 3 running backs this way. What I'm going to assume is that you are wanting us to start 2 running backs. Just as a future reference, an easy way to do this is just leave 2 of the running back slots empty and then put the 3 running backs you're considering down here. And then what I'm able to do at that point is I'm able to go through and fill out your 2 running back slots out of the 3 options. But here, who I'd start this week is I'd probably start Bucky Irving. And now that we know Zach Moss is good to go, I'd probably prefer Moss over ETN. I'm trying to update my rankings. Here we go. Create rankings to make sure that we reflect that. As early in the week, we didn't know if Zach Moss was going to be good to play or not. I like that he was cleared on Friday. It's not like this is a game time decision type spot. And actually, we already have Zach Moss over Travis Etienne in our rankings this week. Good. I just wanted to double check in on that. But yeah, go Moss and Bucky Irving. Now, B Cosme coming out with the start set says, thanks for the awesome team review last week. Now, please cook something up with the starting lineup. Much love, my friend. Going to be excited to check it out. But looking at this wide receiver, we have Godwin, Lamb. We cooking. A tight end, we have Kincaid. I mean, our other options would just be waiver wire options, I guess. So obviously, we're not doing much. Here at running back, okay, we are going to be crushing our league mates. We have both Chuba Hubbard and Bucky Irving. I'm going to go Chuba Hubbard over Bucky just because we've seen the production from Chuba before. But both running backs are in very similar spots where they should have receiving roles and they should be getting pretty much every single touch out of their respective backfields. So I think you should be super excited about both running backs. Going over to what we have with the flex, Harrison is a tough player to bench. Oh, dear God. Can y'all please spam the chat? Would you start Marvin Harrison or Bucky Irving this week? Are you going to go Marvin Harrison or Bucky? I probably go Harrison in a full PPR league. But what's funny is if you go through and if you look at the underdog picks, like projections that I think should probably be taken into consideration. This week, you have Marvin Harrison, higher, lower, 57.5 receiving yards. Where you have Bucky Irving, higher, lower, 84.5 total yards. Full PPR format, obviously, Harrison gives you the receiving volume. We got Bucky, Harrison, Harrison, Bucky, Harrison, Bucky, Harrison, Bucky, 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 Harrison. Bucky safe for floor, Harrison for the ceiling. That's probably where I'm at. I'd probably go Bucky Irving. You get the guaranteed workload. The underdog picks have him significantly higher. Obviously, it's a tough spot in that Marvin Harrison, we do want to say, is a wide receiver 1 rest of season, but you're looking at a running back with a safe 3-down workload. Now, Jamar Binks coming out with the start set. I like the team name. I have Jamar. This is my favorite Jamar team name I've seen. A Bucky Irving, just absolutely must start running back at this point. DeAndre Swift is also very exciting. Hopefully we can get the other guy in the flex. We're going to go Bucky Irving and DeAndre Swift here. Brian Thomas, super, super exciting. Obviously, phenomenal player. Going to be one of the best receivers in the NFL for years to come. With that being said, really tough matchup. London game. Supposed to be a low-scoring offense this week against the Bears. So I'd rather just take the running backs with the guaranteed 3-down workloads. Now, Brazy coming out with a start set. Here for the flex, looking at Flowers, Thomas, Eckler, Amari, Chase Brown. I think we go with Brian Thomas. Zach Moss good to go. Amari garbage quarterback play. Austin Eckler sounds like Brian Robinson will play. Even if he doesn't, hell, you still have Jeremy McNichols taking some work. Zay Flowers is up and down depending on if his team is forced to throw the ball or not. Brian Thomas does have a tough matchup, but the man is just an absolute stud. Now, Michael coming out with a start sit question. Here, we need to fill out running back. We have no Kyron this week. It's between Braylon Allen, Justice Hill, Tank Bigsby. We'll go Tank. I can pull up, though, what the projections are. I'm not excited to start Tank Bigsby. Obviously, the massive week this past week. Bigsby's higher or lower 39.5 rushing yards. You're going to have nothing as a receiver. Justice Hill is higher or lower 36.5 total yards. I think you're less likely to get the touchdown from Justice Hill. You're going to have the receptions that Bigsby won't, though. And then Braylon Allen's higher or lower 30.5 rushing yards. I think Bigsby's probably the most likely to score a touchdown here. So we're going to go Tank Bigsby. Absolutely hate it, though. Obviously, if you could somehow swindle yourself and cut Jonnu Smith, what are we doing? Do we not have a better waiver wire option than Jonnu? Yeah, please go link the team with the site if it's not already. Obviously, it's free for you to do. Just go to the My Teams page. Hit add news, Sleeper, ESPN, Yahoo, whatever it is. And then please go look at the best waiver wire options that are in your league based off the rankings. I definitely put it on my rankings because my rankings are always the most up to date. But you can look at Komet, Auden, Gibson. At least these are like the best available in my league. Where I'm pretty sure you can find a better tight end than Jonnu. But Jimmy coming out with a trade question. This is Brees versus Worthy, Lamb, and Eckler. I'd rather have Lamb over Brees, so I don't even care about Worthy, Eckler here. Running backs after the trade, Etienne Hunt, Brian Robinson Jr., Tracy. Wide receivers after the trade would be London, DK, Lamb, Rome, Tolbert, Pierce. Is this a smart deal? Yes, but I would cut Alec Pierce and pick up another running back off the waiver wire. But yeah, for sure, go get CeeDee Lamb here. Lamb's a better option than Brees. Much better offense. Now, Mother Flocka coming out says 3-2, drop Purdy when I have Burrow. It sucks, but if you're in a spot where you're not going to be able to trade him for anything, and we're absolutely never going to consider starting Purdy over Burrow, then yeah, I think you could drop him. Jaden's Juicy Jugs wants a wide receiver for a running back. Well, I'm sorry. It's a start set question, so I can't see everything here. I can only see your starting lineup, or at least fill it out. I would go Evan Ingram over Cole Kmet if Evan Ingram does play. Running back, we're going to go Chuba Hubbard. And then for the flex, I think we assume that Brian Thomas has to be the best option here, right? Yeah, we go Brian Thomas. But yeah, it sucks, but I'd probably drop Brock Purdy. Now, Mr. B coming out with a question. This is London versus Bijan. We're 5-0. We need a better running back. If we need a better running back, then I think you go Bijan. If you look at them in my rankings, they are pretty much back-to-back. Who do you prefer rest of season? We have a lot of running backs now. It looks like, is this a linked team? Yeah, this is a linked team. So it's a 10-team format. We are going to get Malik Neighbors back in the long term. We're a 5-0 team. Obviously, Bijan's been dealing with a couple nagging injuries, but I think you can go ahead. I think you can take Bijan Robinson here. By no means, it's a no-brainer. Like I said, I have London ranked ahead of Bijan rest of season, but they are neck and neck. It's really just up to you and your personal team. And if we needed a running back, then yeah, let's go get Bijan. But let's move this over and answer some of the questions that we have in the live chat. So please, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. We'd be happy to get to as many as we can. Okay. Dame says, should I start Gibson or Amari Cooper? Does Underdog have a Gibson projection out? This is one thing I'm going to have to do real quick is I'm going to have to, they have Gibson higher, lower, 68.5 total yards. Gibson's in my starting lineup this week in the Flock League, and he could be the difference between a win or a loss here. So I'm going to have to spend a decent amount on Gibson. How long do y'all think Ramondre misses? Do y'all think Ramondre's out 1 week or 2 weeks? Is this just a 1 week thing? Or is Gibson possibly going to be viable for a couple weeks here? And who else would I be starting other than Gibson? I would probably be putting Gibson in over Ladd or Javonte. And I have the open roster spot. Nick saying Ramondre's only missing 1 week. If he's only missing 1 week, I'm not going to go nuts here with Gibson. Okay. But Sydney says bundle Nico for Chase for sure. For sure. Okay, here, let me know this. 12-team double flex format, you would start Antonio Gibson this week over Javonte Williams. How many fab dollars are you spending on Gibson? You have 87 left. How many fab dollars are you spending out of 87 on Antonio Gibson? I'm setting my waiver wire right now. Please let me know. And we have absolutely nobody helping. Everybody just asking their own questions. All right. Well, F me, I guess. We'll go to y'all's questions. Grayson says Flowers or Brian Thomas Jr. We're going to be going with Thomas over Flowers. We got 20, 17, 87, 14, 15, 31, 10 to 12, 30, 20 to 30, 10. Okay, so y'all are a little bit higher than I was. Maybe we got to bump ours up. Okay, Sergio says, I'm down to the Texans or Tampa defense this week. I'm going to go Texans defense. You are favored by 6 to 7 points here for Houston. And at the same time, sportsbooks are putting the Patriots offense as the worst offense in the NFL this week. So I think I go ahead. I think I just play the Texans defense. They're one of the best defenses in fantasy this week. Beaning says Amari Dowdle or Javonte. I probably just play it safe and go with Dowdle. It is a tough matchup against Detroit, but you have the guaranteed volume and a good offense. Jordan says Bucky or Jameson in a PPR format. Bucky Irving by a mile over Jameson Williams for sure. LJ says Debo or Tyreek rest of season. I'm for sure going to be going Tyreek rest of season there. But I personally expect that you are going to get Tua back in. So obviously, if you don't get Tua back in, that's a little bit different. Crestlin says full BBR, Connor or Breece Hall. I have James Conner in the Flock League, and I'd sell him for Breece Hall in a heartbeat. Easily Breece Hall. A big baller Brad says Amari or Bucky Irving. I'd much prefer Bucky Irving over over Amari Cooper this week with no Rashad White. Michael says Keon or Rome rest of season. I'm going to go Rome over Keon rest of season. Cernelli. Let's go ahead and let's pivot back over. I don't think we have too many more questions to get through on the sites. So let me pull these up. Then we can get back to the questions that we have in the live chat. And of course, if y'all wanted to ask any questions, you can always go over to flockfantasy.com. Go to the expert advice button in the top right corner. Get a team review, trade question, start sit question. It'll be answered in this live stream relatively quickly too. We don't have too many more questions. And you can find that link in the chats. And if you wanted that team review, definitely what I'd recommend doing is taking advantage of the free promo that we have over there on Underdog Fantasy. Or if you go over to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, you will get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, you're going to be getting a free Joe Burrow pick, less than half a total yard, and a free team review in the live streams that we're doing every single night. So make sure you take advantage of that. Just set up an account on flockfantasy.com with an email address. With the same email address as your Underdog Fantasy account, so I know who to hook up with that free team review voucher. But let's go find our next questions. So we just answered this one for Mr. B. We are going to go Bijan in your instance. Now going over to A. Pinkerton, we need to find a flex between Kraft, Slayton, Keenan, and Michael Wilson. This is the one scenario where you can play Darius Slayton this week with no Malik Neighbors in a good matchup. 9 times out of 10, I want to be telling everybody, please do not play Darius Slayton, please understand that this is a highly volatile receiver week to week, very similar to Trey Tucker, cannot be trusted. But if it's like, oh, a tight end or wide receivers that also can't be trusted, you can go with them. Good matchup and no Malik Neighbors. Now, code Gaipo coming out says 3-2. We have Brees London, Jaden Reed, Dobbins, Cup, and Devontae. Would Mixon solidify my running back 2 slot? Oh, 100% he would. We have the wide receivers. Let's go through and let's get that upgrade to Joe Mixon. This is an absolute no-brainer deal. Phenomenal trade. Now, going over to Motherflocka's start sit question. 3-2, 16-team league. Dear God, let's go ahead and let's check this out. This is a 16-team format. We are just chilling as is. You're going to be crushing, especially as we get Achane and Brooks added back in. I think we go with Jerome Ford this week in the flex spot. Obviously, the usage has dipped, and this offense does suck, but at least have some cheap receptions. Now, going over to Dez's starts, it says, no Nico, sadly, but we're 5-0. Am I crazy for wanting to sit Evans for Tolbert? I understand you wanting to do so. I just personally wouldn't do it myself. But I know it's a tough matchup for Evans. Tolbert actually is a great matchup in a great environment. I go with Evans, and I honestly don't even play Tolbert here. I would rather have Wan'Dale Robinson. Actually, I'm an idiot. I'd rather have Marvin Harrison. We have Evans and Harrison. And then for the 2 flex spots, David Montgomery is someone we have to play over Tolbert and Wan'Dale, even if they are more exciting this week. And I think you can go Wan'Dale in a full PPR format over Rico Dowdle and Jalen Tolbert, where we've seen the long track record now, at least this season, of Wan'Dale Robinson giving you the consistent target volume. And it's that great matchup going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. But yeah, I don't know if you're in a spot in which you can... I don't know if you can bench Evans. If you really wanted to bench him for Tolbert, you do you. Like I said, I think that Tolbert is in a better situation this week, but Mike Evans is Mike Evans. Macon Bacon coming out with a start set. Here, really, the guy that we would possibly get out of this lineup would be Zay Flowers. We're not playing Lazard and Just Hill and Pitts are the only options. So no, we are leaving this as is. We would play Kraft over Pitts, and we would play Fields over Darnold. I mean, Darnold's on bye. So yeah, I think we leave the lineup as is. Obviously, there aren't too many exciting options, but we have great names in the actual lineup. It's not on the bench. Now, 7 coming out. So let me just run through real quick and give out a quick explanation for how to fill out these start sits, my friend, so it's just a little bit easier for you in the future. So like if you need to start 2 running backs, right? What you want to do in that instance is you want to go through and you want to leave 2 empty running back slots, and then you can put all the running backs that you have on your roster down below. And if you actually link your team with the site, it automatically does it for you. So all you have to do is put one player into your lineup, and we're able to know what your team is in the league, and then we load out all your starting lineup requirements and all the players in. But yeah, just leave the empty flex spots open. Leave the empty positional spots open and the players you would consider underneath. It's a 2 and 3 team here where we have a couple injured running backs, but it looks like it's going to be better soon with Mixon coming back in. I think we go with Bucky Irving and Joe Mixon for our 2 running backs. Actually, I'm an idiot. We go Brees Hall, Joe Mixon for our 2 running backs this week. Wide receiver, we have Pittman here as well, but we're going to go Harrison and Bryant Thomas. And then for the flex, we're going to pivot back over and go with Bucky Irving. I'm assuming it's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league. But like I said, if you just link your league with the site, then it will automatically fill all that stuff out for you where you don't have to worry about it. But if you are going to manually fill it out and you don't want to link with the site, then at that point, just leave the running back slots empty and put the players you're considering underneath. And then I can fill out your entire lineup and send it to you through the site as well. Now, this is going to be a team review coming out from Lights Camera Jackson. Say brother currently sitting at 2 and 3 when I feel like I shouldn't be. We traded Burrow for Ayuk 2 weeks back, but I feel like it wasn't the right move. This team has Lamar Jackson. If you would have asked me 2 weeks ago if you should trade Joe Burrow for Brandon Ayuk, I would have said, hell yes. Now, obviously, Ayuk has crashed and burned. Obviously, Ayuk does look a whole lot less exciting now. So who knows if it was the right move. Definitely doesn't look as good at this point, but anyway, pulling it up, this is a team on ESPN, so you should be able to link this with the site. I would definitely take advantage of the free My Teams page that we have on the site, so you can go through and use like the waiver wire rankings, and also it was just a lot. It's cool to see the power rankings, and two, it'd be a lot easier for me to like dive into your team for you here, and I'd know more about your league settings than the other teams in your league. But anyway, looking at the squad, this is a league where you start 2 receivers and 1 flex. So the wide receiver depth isn't going to be super important. We have the elite level quarterback in Lamar Jackson. Going over to what we have with the running backs. We are currently sitting with James Cook, Tony Pollard in this starting lineup. Going down to the bench, we have these running backs that give you the depth and the floor, but if their situation were to change, they kind of turn into league winners. Like we have Bucky Irving, we have Chase Brown, we have Zach Moss. And yeah, you're already seeing that this week with Rachaad White going down, Bucky Irving looking like he is absolutely going to crush. I would go ahead, and one thing that I do need to point out, and obviously there's nothing we can do about this week. It's going to be something that we fix for weeks in the future. But if you could go ahead and in the future not play any Thursday night options in your flex spot, it would give us a lot more flexibility on this team. Like if you go, hey, I want to play Brandon Ayuk, but I also have Jamar Chase, Garrett Wilson, where obviously Jamar Chase and Garrett Wilson are much better than Brandon Ayuk. It doesn't matter if Ayuk plays on Thursday, you still go through, you put him in at wide receiver 2, just in case anything happens. So you have a little more flexibility if we are having to maneuver this team around. Now, with that being said, with this lineup, it does look like James Cook may end up missing. So I think what you're probably going to do here is you probably go through and drop James Cook. Not drop James Cook. You move James Cook to the bench and play Bucky Irving this week at running back. But great running back room. Going over to receiver, we have Chase, Wilson, Ayuk. I'm fine with Ayuk as wide receiver 3, to be honest. We have Keenan, Jennings, Waddle. So, I mean, we have plenty of wide receiver depth here as well. It's tough to say this with Ayuk not performing. I mean, typically with a roster like this, with these league settings and with this construction, the optimal move to make is to go ahead and look to sell one of the top end options that we have at running back, somebody like James Cook, with one of the wide receiver depth pieces that we have with somebody like Brandon Ayuk, and go get an elite wide receiver if possible. Now, the issue with this is Brandon Ayuk's been an absolute turd, so you're not going to be able to get anything for him. You're just going to be stuck with him on the squad. Tight end, we have Sam Laporta. Obviously, tight end that we can play every single week, regardless of matchup. I love the team. I think it's going to be much better than a 2-3 team in the future. The only thing I can say is let's take James Cook out of the lineup. Let's put Bucky Irving in the lineup. I'm sure you already know this. And also for the Thursday night games in the future, let's not start anybody in the flex. Put them in either wide receiver 2 or running back 2 if you're going to commit to them. And if we get the ability where we have a wide receiver popping off and we're able to make a 2-for-1 deal and upgrade their running back, I would go ahead and I would look to do so. But it's just, you can't do it this week with Brandon Ayuk being so bad. And yeah, thank you again, Grant. I really do appreciate you. And I really hope I was able to help you out in some way, my guy. But let's move this over to Lil Noah's start set. Says, I'm more curious between Laporta and Kraft. I feel like I'm playing Laporta just because of the big name. The thing with Tucker Kraft is Romeo Dobbs will be back in and possibly Christian Watson as well. So I think that the target volume may actually take a hit. So I personally would go with Sam Laporta over Tucker Kraft, but that is just me. Going over to what we have at running back, Bucky Irving is just somebody you have to play over Zach Moss this week. Flex, we will go Harrison here over Moss. Well, unless there's another receiver, I'd go Harrison over Brian Thomas. So, yeah, this is a phenomenal team in general. I mean, the only thing that I think that we could talk about is the tight end position, as you mentioned. And while Kraft last week would have been higher than Laporta in my rankings for sure, based off no Dobbs as well as no Christian Watson, I think here it's maybe a little bit tougher. But yeah, this team is freaking insane. B. Zeki coming out with a start sit question. Here, wide receiver, we're going to go ahead and jam in. We have no Rice. We have no Puka. We're going to be going with Tank Dell and your call between Jalen Tolbert and George Pickens. And then quarterback, we go with Allen over Cousins, even with Cousins having a higher scoring offense against the Panthers this week. I think a lot of that goes actually through the ground with Cousins. And then down to the flex, we are going to go with the other wide receiver. We're going to go Jalen Tolbert. But yeah, none of the running backs here are appealing. And with Josh Downs, it sounds like Anthony Richardson will be the starter. And right now, it sounds like Michael Pittman will be good to go. So in that instance, I think Josh Downs becomes a lot less appealing. Now, Macon Bacon coming out with a start set. DJ Moore, Stephon Diggs in there at receiver. Play both over Zay Flowers. Tight end, I will go Tucker Kraft over Pitts, even if we have the additional receivers added in Green Bay. And then going over to the flex spots, we're going to go Zay Flowers and hope that this is an offense that has to throw the ball. Hope that Washington can keep up. And we're going to be going with Trey Sermon as well. Now that Sermon's been removed from the injury report, and you officially have no Jonathan Taylor. But let me move this over and see if we have any more questions in this stream. So Lord Farquaad, decimated by buys and injuries this week, and swapped Rice for Tolbert. Good move. No Tyreek. I would go Wan'Dale over Amari and Tolbert. Wan'Dale just great matchup and safer target share than Tolbert. Tight end, I'm going to go Pitts, even with Schultz having the expanded role with no Nico. Running back, we're going to be going with Zach Moss over Rico Dowdle. And then for the flex spot between Tolbert, Dowdle, Amari, I probably go with Rico Dowdle. It's a tough matchup against the Lions, but it's a good offense where you have the guaranteed touches. Now, Champa Bay says, what's up, Mason? Thank you for all the helpful content. Pick two between Godwin, Zay, Garrett Wilson. Thank you. Thank you. Looking at this wide receiver, we're to go ahead. We will take Garrett Wilson, Chris Godwin relatively easily, to be honest. And then going down to the flex, I mean, if we were looking at getting anybody in, it would be Zay Flowers. But there's no way you start Zay Flowers over any of these running backs. So I think we're leaving as is. Double checking quarterback, I would go Love over Baker. And I would go Laporta over Kraft. But I do think it's really tough. But it looks like we got through all the questions in the stream tonight. We've been live for about 3.5 hours. So maybe this isn't a 5-hour live stream tonight, which your boy could use the sleep, not going to lie. But I definitely want to remind y'all, please go over to the site if for whatever reason you haven't already. We built out a bunch of free tools for y'all. Like the main thing that I would highly recommend for y'all, one, because I think it's freaking awesome to see the power rankings of your team. But you can go ahead and if you play on Sleeper, ESPN, or Yahoo, you can actually link your fantasy football team in your fantasy football league with flockfantasy.com for completely free. See updated power rankings. See the best available players over here on your waiver wire as well. You can actually go and look at the trade finder here too, where like if you want to go, oh, I'm looking to trade for Tyreek Hill. What are Tyreek Hill trades that were made today? I play in a league where we only start one quarterback. It's a full PPR league. It's a 12-team league. You can look at your exact league settings and look at deals that were done in real fantasy football leagues with your exact settings. Like insane. Look how many trades were done with Tyreek Hill with these league settings today. All this stuff's completely free for you over there on flockfantasy.com. If you wanted to ask a question on the site, you always can with a button in the top right corner that says expert advice. Here, you can ask a team review, trade question, start set question. What's really cool about what we're doing on the site is you can ask a question literally at any time of the day, and I will answer it in the live stream that night. And even if you're not in the live stream, the answer will be sent to you through the site. So we built it out with YouTube that if I answer your question 3 hours and 30 minutes into the live stream, you don't have to try to find it with the random link. You press the link and it jumps you to the exact time that I answered your question. So definitely, if you ever have a question that you want to ask, if you have a trade that you're interested in, I would go ahead and I would check that out. Or if you're ever wanting a team review, I'll just get that in as soon as you want. That way you are first in line. And again, if you wanted the free team review, definitely the way to go about that, at least what I would recommend, the cheapest, is going over to Underdog Fantasy, checking out the pick'ems. And if you use promo code FLOCK, you'll get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. You'll get that free Joe Burrow pick, more than less than half a total yard for the Sunday game. And you'll get a free team review in the live stream that we're doing every single night. Just make sure that you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog Fantasy, so I can set you up with that free team review voucher. But thank you again. I really do appreciate you. I will be live, of course, tomorrow answering all the questions, and I really hope I get to see you there.